Thank you. Monday, April 23rd, Tuftonboro Board of Selectmen are in session. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first order of business is bid opening on the former code officer's vehicle. I have 7 bids. How about that?
I feel like you're kind of. There's a whole generation don't even know who we're talking about.
No, that's, you're right.
Want me to open those for you?
That's okay.
I can use car business.
It's very professional.
What's that?
Very good, very smooth, good technique.
No.
No paper cuts.
Right.
Yeah,
My
really.
father used to do that, all his mail would be stacked up with a nicely touched.
Problem is, this is a right-handed
Oh.
opener, and I'm left-handed,
Oh.
so, but whatever. We will somehow persevere. Okay. First bid from Spiderweb Gardens is for $1,655.
1650.
1655. Okay. The next bid is from Jeff Moody, and it's for $2,160.57. Jeff's an old pro at bidding on this. Okay. The next one is from Scott Moody, and it's for $2,525.25. Next one is from John McNamara, and it's for $2,201.99. From Michael Fournier, it's $277. So never can tell when you're gonna get a real bargain, right? From William Graham Jr., $2,500.
How much was that?
$2,500.
2500.
Yep. And from John Morrill, $1,200. Okay, you got them all?
Yep.
Yeah. Looks like Scott Moody's bought himself a truck.
Okay. Yep, high bid is Scott Moody, Post Office Box 1865, Wolfboro, $2,525.25. All right. Now, Karen, we have paperwork to sign, is that right, on this?
Yeah,
Do I sign that now, or when?
that would be great, actually, if you just want to get it done, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually you just do a motion to approve the amount and
I'll
everything.
make a motion that we award the bid for the code enforcement officer's former truck to Scott Moody of Wolfboro, Manchester, $2,525.25.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Congratulations to the successful bidder. Okay.
It's a left-handed pen.
I think it's ambidextrous. Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Give those to you. All right. Next, we have public input. And then we'll go on to review and approval of minutes for, all right. I don't, yeah. I don't have the 4-9 minutes here. I have this 4-9. All right.
I
Okay,
have none.
yeah, all right. You get the 4-9 minutes?
Yeah, I can make copies for me.
No, I've read them
Use
before,
mine.
I just, yeah. We're good, yeah.
Okay.
Any additions or corrections?
I have none.
All right, I'll entertain a motion on approval of the public minutes on 4-9.
I'll move approval of the minutes from April 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And I have the non-public here. I apologize for that.
Do you have the non-public?
All right. So,
I'll move approval of the non-public meeting minutes from April 9th.
all right.
Before I second it, I have a change.
Well, why don't you second it and then we'll change it.
Second.
Yeah.
And I ask that the last line when it says with all in favor, the motion passed 2-0. That be
Since
replaced.
you were not
Part in the room.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. All right,
That's
So
all I
I'll
have.
second that amendment.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And those are public.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Confidential.
No. Okay. The Selectmen's Work Session, Friday, April 13th. Any additions or corrections to that?
I'm all set.
I'll move approval.
All right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. First non-public from the 13th,
It'll be the 10:13.
the 10:13 a.m. Yep.
I have nothing.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Those are public.
They are. And the 10:37 non-public?
I have nothing.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And those are all set.
Yep. None of those are sealed, so. Okay. Mr. Howard, come on down. Welcome.
Like Monty Hall, right?
Yep.
I'm here to give a brief overview on the Dietz case. That's correct.
Thank you.
As you're aware, on May 9, the Supreme Court will hear a case that Dietz has brought against the town of Tuftonboro, specifically because the zoning board granted equitable waivers to a neighbor of Dietz for some building that took place in 1999 and 2008. The board held a hearing on November, and I'll pass out what I put together, a brief timeline. and I'll have one for the record.
Thank you.
And then the second page shows the actual plot of the Sawyer Point property. And it's the plot to the left that is the Dietz property. And I think it's color-coded fairly accurately. In fact, it came from the Sawyer Point attorneys.
So the block of property here is all deeds?
No, it is all Sawyer Point.
Okay.
And what happened is this is a property that dates back probably to the late 40s or early 50s that never had a full-blown survey until 2014. And at that time, it was noticed that, as you look at the map, the page 2 that I gave you, the purple line that's straight across the property was the measured location of a 50-foot setback by David Braun, who is the builder for the Sawyer Point. The blue line that you see is the actual location surveyed by Jim Raines and the White Mountain Survey Company. As you can see, there is a space that's color-coded yellow that is in between what was thought to be the 50-foot setback in 2008, and for that matter in 1999, and the 50-foot setback as it actually exists, done by survey. The equitable waiver that we received in front of the zoning board was for the portion that's in yellow.
So the piece that's in purple was granted a waiver in 2008.
That's correct.
And
It was.
at that time, if the setback had been correctly annotated on
Correct.
the plot, then that would have covered the piece in yellow as well.
That's correct. So there wasn't a variance granted for the purple addition in 2008. That was actually an extension of the part that you see that's in green was done back in 1999.
What is this wording right here, do you know?
That word, no, I don't know.
Right there, it's too small for me to see.
Primary bearing, I don't see attached note. I'm not sure what.
So that's the 2014 measured boundary, right?
What you see here is correct, it's 2014.
Yes.
Prior to this, there was never an accurate survey done.
So when, this all has to do with the what was that act? Shoreline Protection Act?
Yes.
And was that in force in 1999?
No, not that.
Okay,
I
so that,
But it was in 2008.
Yes.
so the 1999,
What was that, Jack?
Wasn't prior to this, it was after this, in 2008.
all right,
Right.
the
It was
1999
in-
edition.
I'm sorry, it was in effect in 2008,
Yeah, but after this,
but
after that application.
After the application.
after the 2008 application.
Correct.
Okay.
So we can assume that the purple is not at play, right?
The purple was in play at the time. I mean, the purple is what the builder thought based on his measurement.
Right.
The purple's what he got approval for.
That's correct.
Okay.
But,
And he didn't get approval for the yellow because at that time, everybody understood that it was not in the setback area.
Correct.
so the yellow equitable waiver happened in what year?
That building took place in 2008, the yellow.
Okay, so that's 2008.
But when did the equitable waiver happen?
In, the equitable waiver was granted in November of 2016.
Okay. Really? And there's no statute of limitation on this sort of thing?
Not really. There is a 10-year window that which covers the 1999 build, and because The discrepancy was noted after 10 years in 1999. It's not as stringent to grant an equitable waiver as it was for the 2008.
And what's Dietz looking for a remedy?
He
I don't
won-
even know that he's got standing, but let's assume he does. The Supreme Court's going
He'd like to see the
whole building taken down.
the second story, the green, the purple, and the yellow taken down. His attorney's position is the board should never have granted a building permit in 1999, and that the board should not.
Was there a 50-foot setback in 1999? The Shoreline Protection Act didn't happen back then.
Correct. No, there was. In 1999, you just went and got a building permit,
Right.
and that's what
I think it was like 25 feet, or I don't know.
Yes.
it was something, town may have had some regulation. But the 50-foot setback did not come into play until 2008.
If I understand it correctly, when this first became an issue before the town, and you're the landowner of where the purple is, you were the understanding that it was going back to what is the agreed upon boundary, right?
Setback.
Setback, it goes back to you figured the purple line is actually where the blue line is.
That-
You, the person, the owner of that property, and the town assumed that it was a proper boundary, correct?
We did, correct. We assumed the purple line was the proper boundary.
Okay.
Correct.
And it's also my understanding that when it comes to two pieces of land, and I have an issue with you, it's the first licensed survey that takes weight, correct?
For the notice.
If you and I have an issue,
Yeah.
it's the first legitimate.
That's correct.
Okay, and for me to beat you in court, I just don't have to prove that it probably the civil standard means. I have to have a higher standard, correct?
That's correct. In fact, in order to grant an equitable waiver, first of all, the violation needs not to be noticed for 10 years or more. The violation is not an outcome of ignorance of the law. The physical dimension does not constitute a public or private nuisance, and the cost of correction far outweighs any public benefit. So when we analyzed this particular case, we thought the Sawyer Point met all of these conditions, and so we granted equitable
So
waiver.
was there a house there prior to 1999?
Oh, yes. No, the truth is the green outline, or if you take a look at forget the green is the second story.
So it's the hash mark.
The black hash marks, correct.
Okay, that house was there prior to 1999?
Oh, yeah. That
So,
probably goes back to the late 40s.
And all the property owners that abut were properly notified?
Oh, yeah. No, everything was followed. It should have been followed at the time frame the work was being done. And it was the same builder.
Yep.
But the builder in 1999 and in 2008 used sketches of the interior of the house to describe what they were going to do for Sawyer Point, that met Sawyer Point, and then did put in one line that said, well, we're about 50 feet from the, I measured it as best I could under the circumstances, and we're 50 feet. So that's when Sawyer Point came and said, you know what, we wanted in 2008, we want to put a small addition that would follow the footprint of the existing building.
Now, is Sawyer Point an association, or is it a particular landowner operating under a?
It's a particular landowner.
That's this one parcel.
Yes,
that's correct.
Sawyer Point LLC. And what's at issue here is not the footprint, because the footprint.
That's correct.
Right, it's what, a second story on top of the footprint?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's the
So,
yellow portion and only the second story of that yellow portion.
only,
and that was added in 2008.
Correct.
so all of the green isn't at play, it's just the yellow.
Well, all of the black that you see is not in play. I mean, that's been existing.
Right.
Dietz is arguing that the green, in addition to the yellow, needs to be gone. Because
All of the green.
That's correct.
And Dietz is He's obviously closer than 50 feet from the lake.
He is, and in fact, years ago, he got an equitable waiver for his construction process, because, or a variance, because his property doesn't meet setback rules.
And there's some other activity in play with respect to these two property owners, is that right, that may have,
Yes, these two property owners don't necessarily get along very well.
And they got a common
And-
driveway too.
Well, that's where the thrust of the difference exists, Chip, because when the Dietzes moved in and redid their house, they paved their driveway. And if you take a look at that, they did move into Sawyer Point's property.
Right.
And so Sawyer Point is the one.
Whereabouts?
Down at the bottom.
this area here.
And so they're the ones who ordered White Mountain to do a survey to find out, hey, I think this got paved over my property.
Right.
And through use of the survey and a metal detector, they found the pin under the pavement. So they went and took Dietz, I believe, to court. I don't know the details, and they won a judgment against him. And now, in close examination of the same survey, hey, those expansions that you got, you shouldn't have gotten that expansion permission. Because
It's such a wonderful thing to be a lawyer.
Job security.
It's a lawyer full
It's
of
just
employment.
a money-making
Yeah, that's
opportunity
right.
down here.
Yep, yep. So it's tit for tat.
It's a domestic.
And,
Yes.
and we're ratcheting it up, right?
it's a
Okay.
shame the town of Tufton Borough's involved, but we are the ones, the zoning board, that granted the equitable waiver.
Right.
And so the town was taken to court. We went to Superior. The Superior Court, right in Carroll County, the judgment's almost 30 pages, which I'm told by Rick
The
Sager,
decision,
but
yeah.
double to triple the standard length. And I have to say, I'm very proud to report that the Superior Court backed the zoning board 100%. There were no issues found of any sort. Every judgment that we made, the court acknowledged was a reasonable judgment based on the evidence that was presented. So we thought this was probably going to be the end of it. We were wrong.
Well, I mean, unless they change their ways, the Supreme Court's not going to overturn on facts. They're just going to overturn on
A point of law.
point of law.
Yeah.
So if the judge messed up
Correct.
on their reading of the law, so
I mean, we did the best we could to apply the equitable waiver criteria. We listened to all the, I mean,
Right.
there were surveys, not just a survey, but a comparable examination of property values and whether or not there's any
diminution.
correct. And Sawyer Point had an exhaustive survey done very professionally. The Dietzes had one done, but it was an opinion. It was one page. And everything, the builder was there, David Braun, and he described the method he used. He said, I used the best practice of the day. You know, I'm not a surveyor. And I was focused on the interior of the building, not distance from the shoreline.
Now, how long have you been on the zoning board?
I think I remember the 2008. I wasn't chairman.
And how many of these do you have? Is this like the first or second one that, in your experience on the board?
Equitable waivers? There aren't too many of equitable waivers, but we grant variances for something like this quite regularly. In fact, almost probably 2/3 of all of our cases are variances for, you know, my cottage dates back to whenever I want to put a second story, I want to screen in. All right, does the drip line exceed what it currently exists? No, it doesn't. Okay, you have a right to enjoy your property with a screen like all of your neighbors do. So we see this kind of stuff all the time. There was nothing extraordinary about the 2008 application. And it is worth noting that the Dietzes never objected in 2008. In fact, there was not even a letter from them. It wasn't until this survey.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try the case. I mean, they kind of slept on their rights. If they had a problem in 2008, they should have done something then.
I brought that up. I asked Mr. Dietz directly, why didn't you say something before? And he admitted, I didn't know.
Didn't know he was going to have a lawsuit about the driveway.
Right, yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that was going to happen either.
Yeah.
Rick, I've talked to Rick Sager about this, and he is not surprised, as I mentioned, that the Supreme Court has accepted the appeal, because they do that for every appeal. He is surprised that they're asking for oral arguments. He has not submitted any sort of opinion on his own on behalf of the town, because the Sawyer Point attorneys, who he has been coordinating with, are doing all the arguing.
Right. Attorney Arnold. Yep.
In fact, he does not even plan on attending. I'm going to attend just for my own sake. I'd like to see what the Supreme Court...
Well, you're the chairman of the Board of Variance or
Oh,
Board of
yeah.
Adjustment?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna-
so we need to have somebody there,
Yeah.
because at some point, the court may ask a question of the town, and if the town doesn't have anybody there,
Right.
Mario
So,
can't answer for the town. He can assume this is.
So you can make an offer of proof.
so I recommend that you authorize Rick Sager to go, in fact, ask him to go, even though he's not going to be arguing, just to represent the town, because it is technically the town that's being sued.
It's like Holmberg's case with that street there. We own the street, so that's why we're in court, right?
Yeah. This is really an argument between two neighbors who don't like each other and don't get along.
Yeah.
But we're wrapped up in the middle of it, so.
Yeah.
Rick Sager would like to go, but he didn't feel comfortable, since he's not arguing and he didn't prepare a brief, to bill the town for.
And your recommendation is that we should be represented there?
Yes, I agree with Chip. I think, it'd be a good
He can
idea.
stand up and say, Arnold is gonna do the oral. I mean, that's not a
Yeah.
problem, right? Or he's already said.
Well, and I think it's great and proper that you're there, but courts are the attorney's playing field, so.
Well, I plan to be
it's-
on the cheap seats. I know.
Yeah.
I'm not
You
going to
know.
be up front, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't wanna have something happen there where
I
the court
understand.
decides against us because there's no
Because we didn't care.
Or,
no offer. of
right,
proof
or
on our
they
side.
decide against us, and if we'd had somebody there that understands what's going on, he could stick his hand up and say, excuse me.
I agree.
So-
So could you please tell Rick?
Yeah.
On behalf, he offered to drive down with me if it turns out he could go.
Yeah,
And I said, that's fine. We'll go.
no,
But I'd love to see you.
you have a legal budget in ZBA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we do.
Broke him apart.
Yeah, so it's on your dime. But no, I absolutely,
Okay.
no, I.
It's also a learning
absolutely-
experience.
Yeah, absolutely support.
All right, then I will
Yeah,
call Rick
possibly.
after this and we'll plan on going.
Set it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Bring home a win.
Yeah.
Okay,
When
again,
is-
thank you for your time and effort.
We have just had the date, when does that happen?
The
Is that scheduled?
May 9.
May 9th.
Yep.
2 weeks from Wednesday, right? Yeah.
Travel safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you, Mr.
Thank you
Howard.
again for your efforts.
Anything else for us?
No, not at this time. It's pretty quiet in the zoning board.
Okay.
We rarely see
So
anything.
you prevailed in Brusso. Was it Brusso?
Yes.
Well, you
We-
decided in Brusso.
We decided unanimously not to grant a special
But the
exception.
court decided to say you were right, I think.
The court has not met on
Okay.
Russo. They were waiting on the zoning board.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
May I ask a
Yes,
question
you
while
may.
you're here? Just to, so I can get it in a nutshell. One thing is the boundary dispute over the driveway. He's paving over, it turns out he's paving over his neighbors.
The boundary dispute I gave as background for the selectmen. It is not part of this case to
Oh, okay.
in any way, shape, or form.
It's not on paper as part of the case.
Correct. This,
Okay.
this case is about the amount of construction that Sawyer Point did.
Okay, the second level.
Correct. There's, if you measure it out, there's actually they received a variance for 12 feet or so. They should have received variance for 22 feet. So there's a 10-foot section that, had we known what the correct boundary was. But in 2008, we didn't need a formal survey. Oh, yeah.
So, thank you, Chuck. So it's the amount of construction and the height.
And, no, not so much the height, it's the
It's the
amount of
setback.
construction, it's the setback. That everything
The
that,
builder estimated a 50-foot setback, and once it was surveyed to exactly conform to the shoreline,
there
It's
was a
about a
difference.
12-foot
Yeah.
difference.
And you'll see, if you flip the page to the,
The builder surveyed on behalf of Sawyer Point.
I don't even want to use the word survey. The builder measured
Oh, okay, he measured, and then Sawyer Point did the professional survey.
in 2014.
Yeah.
And it was driven by the
So it
driveway.
has to do with the setback.
Correct.
Okay. Are we
Thank
clear?
As clear as I can be.
All right, great. All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Be
Chief
safe. Happy
Thompson.
spring.
Yep.
Morning, Chief.
Thank you.
No crying fire in a crowded room, right?
Thank you.
Currently, we have 57 fire calls, 40 EMS, 5 service calls, 2 special details for 104 for the year. 5 gas permits have been issued, 4 oil burner permits and inspections have been done. Wood stove and pellet stove inspections 3, life safety 4, for a total of 16. As you probably know, the last windstorm on the 16th had some minor isolated damage throughout town. Affected Route 171, Governor Wentworth Highway, and Middle Road. During that, there was also a metal shed roof that blew off a home on 171. There was 2 motor vehicle accidents during the storm event, and no injuries reported in either of those. The Carroll County Coalition for Public Health has been holding a CERT, Community Emergency Response Team training on Wednesdays at our training room at the Central Station. And they've had a good outcome as far as they've had more people than expected that has actually been showing up to the trainings. They originally said that there would be about 5 people, and there was 10 or more for the different classes. We've been involved in teaching some of the different modules, the fire-related modules, such as fire extinguisher use and search and rescue part. The search and rescue part of the whole training is coming up on the 25th, and Chris Morgan is going to be teaching that to them. They're going to be continuing to use the classroom until the end of May. After looking at the electric bill, apparently the meeting that Selectmen Markison and Doug Smithwood went to and talked with the New Hampshire Co-op, they were successful in reducing the service charge down to $58.64 from $351.85.
Is that per month?
That's per month. However, looking at the bill a little bit further, now the delivery charge has been increased by $136.17. So the actual savings would be $156.50. So there was some adjustments made in here. There's still a savings. However, that savings can go away at any point in time if they see a spike in the 3-phase used. And apparently that spike is the once in a year use of the fire system as far as testing the 500 gallon per minute pump that kicks in. And if we can keep that from happening by using the generator to operate that pump during the testing, then that spike won't be seen. However, if it can't be, then that may affect that particular amount. But we're going to try to make that happen. Engine 4's repairs were more than $1,000 deductible. The actual bill was $4,518.22. We have made a claim with Primex in reference to this incident.
So what was the cause of the damage?
As far as it was a snowy, slippery road down in
Oh, by the basin.
No, it's not, it's actually down in off of, you go down in off of Crossnet and down in the small slippery road that was down there. The truck was backing up out of the particular road, and the duals set over into a tree that was leaning over the roadway, and actually crushed the gutter, which is an integral part of the roof, apparently. Originally, the company thought that they could just replace the gutter with like a stick-on type of gutter, and can't be because it's extruded. When the roof was made, it was made part of that. They actually had to cut it out and re-weld a new section. So when you did that, obviously the roof the paint doesn't like having welding done to it, so it had to be all repainted. So that was that. We do have a $1,000 deductible, which will be applied to that, and it'll come out of my maintenance side of the budget. The truck was out of service for approximately 2 weeks and is now back in service. While that was out of service, we did notice a loss in the equipment as far as having it, and responding to different calls and stuff like that. Losing that particular truck, we lose over half of our water capability. The Tufton Borough Fire Rescue Department and Tufton Borough Police Department met with all the representatives from the different camps in town on Friday, April 20th at the training room at Central Station. A roundtable discussion of the different camps' emergency action plans were discussed. Also, what could be expected of our emergency services if some type of emergency happened at the different camps. So that went on for about approximately 2 hours, and I believe it was very useful as far as the meeting was. A lot of different things were brought up, a lot of questions asked, and they're going to come back with some further information for us as far as the department's work.
In that meeting, did you go over camp layouts with these various camps, or is that something you do separately? Because I know that from time to time, they'll add a tents over in this area and that sort of thing. I mean, it seems to me it's important that you want to have a up-to-date layout of where all
We
of the...
had discussed as far as being able to get a map of each camp updated, obviously each year as far as it goes. So yes, anything that is new, anything that has changed as far as those goes. In most cases, the fire department has most of the updated stuff. However, everything changes each year.
And when you get a call out at a camp, let's say there are 20 structures on the camp.
Yes.
Is there some way that they can indicate to you that, yeah, it's in cabin 27, or, I mean, do you have some sort of legend on these layouts that...
They do let you know what part of the camp it is on the initial call, and actually the camps are very good about sending people out to the different sections of the road and guiding you in to the different areas. Obviously, as far as something along a active shooter or something, a person that's in the camp that is doing harm to people, that may be a little bit different as far as you're not going to be sending people out into the open to guide you in that particular case, especially if someone is still actively in there. But as far as fires, EMS calls, and some type of emergencies, they've always been really good about guiding us right in as far as emergency services. And yes, the layouts do show you the different parts of the camps and stuff. And a lot of them have a lot of, obviously a lot of different buildings. It takes us, when we do inspections on the fire side, it can take a day to go through some of the camps to get all the inspections completed. We will be doing that for every camp this year as required by the state as far as doing the life safety inspections of the camp. We had been doing that in the past, but in the past, we may not have got to every camp every year. But now, required by the state, we have to inspect each one every year.
And have you got those inspections scheduled yet, or is that?
No, we have one scheduled. However, as far as camp-wise, this year obviously has been a little bit different when some of the snow goes away and that they can actually get to some of the buildings in some of the areas, whether it's in Sentinel or Mara Vista. Once they start being able to open up the camps, getting water on and things like that, that's when we'll start being able to go back and get it all done. Paramedics get Galvin taught a Stop the Bleed class at the Central Station in the training room to 7 nurses from different schools in the Governor Wentworth School District. Those particular nurses will now go back to their schools and teach the staff that particular program. That includes our school at Tufton Borough. The nurse was there to go through that. We also will be working with the local camps to complete this type of training with them that we're interested in being able to complete that also.
Where did the Stop the Bleed program come from?
It actually came from out of state. When some of these larger incidents happened, they found that a lot of the people could have been saved by tourniquets being put in place.
Wasn't one Sandy Hook?
Yes. Obviously a certain amount of people as far as died from bleeding out from extremity injuries and stuff, which they found that if tourniquets had been put in place, they possibly could have been saved. And it doesn't, as far as we've seen tourniquets put in place for injuries that have happened in different areas, so it's not just a matter of shootings and things like that.
Now, is this Stop the Bleed, is this strictly tourniquets or other technology?
It's basically strictly tourniquets and packing wounds.
Doesn't include blood expanders?
There are some products that are treated that you pack into the wound to stop the bleeding. That is basically what is in the packets that has a life expectancy on it, but it's usually like 5 years. So the clotting material on those bandages that are in those are the only thing that will go bad in the particular kits that cost anywhere from like $40 or something. One thing that has to
If
be...
you need it, it doesn't matter how much it costs.
No,
does it?
not at all. And if it's out there, I think it's very well, it should be out there as far as it goes. That we can save lives. So.
In my other job, I deal with all the nurses in the school district. Every single one of them complimented Skip Galvin. Would you please tell him thank you?
Very good. On April 9th, we had the final meeting at the Central Station to go over final paperwork for FEMA in the state of New Hampshire to get the payment for the Winter Storm Stella. The town qualified for $15,512.49 roughly in funding, which has a 75% reimbursement, which should be $11,634.37, which we should be seeing sometime in May. That has to go through a few more hoops in the state side of things, but it's now in the state's hands to delve that out to the town. So we're getting closer.
Does that go into the general fund?
Yes.
Or does it go back to your
No,
department?
it goes to the general fund.
After Concord takes their cut.
I was going to say, yeah, you got to skim a little off on the way through.
And how many hours have you spent on the theme?
I have not kept track of that.
Is it more than 10?
But I'm afraid that keeping track of it's going to take more hours.
There you go.
However, yes, it's far more than 10 hours. I mean, some of the meetings we had were just, basically with that. But
So if you had to do it again, would it be a shorter process for you now that you know some of the
yes, because I would say no.
steps?
Yes, all kidding aside, as far as different things, the process will be shorter. One thing that with this process was it was all computer-based. The new process that they had put in, you know, instead of someone coming out and sitting down with you and going through every thing and every piece of paper, you loaded it all into computer-wise, sent it out, and it went from there. And this was the first time that it was used in New Hampshire, as far as it goes. They had just got this program put in place. However, as far as now, we know that our firefighters, all their time does not count in anything that they do. So I wouldn't waste the time of going through, sorting out everything that they did, you know, hour upon hour, putting that all down on paper because it was all a waste of time. We were gonna get back probably roughly $3,000 or $4,000 for the fire department side of things, but none of that counted. The only way that it would have counted, the only thing that counted was Captain Pike's overtime. Where the other firefighters weren't in an overtime status, they would call. That's where, the only way that we would have got money from that is if we had overspent the amount of money that was allotted for the firefighters. And in the beginning of the year, there's no way that that was going to happen. So, but yes, it probably is worth doing for a certain amount of money if you spend lots of money on the highway side.
We learned some lessons along the way, right?
Yep.
And,
Most definitely.
and of course, one of the things is that the feds are looking for a pretty detailed procurement policy, and thank you for sending along the information. And I'm in the process of gathering up some other examples, and we'll try and put something together that, I mean, what we do today is 100% compliant with New Hampshire law in terms of purchasing. But if we want to be eligible for federal money, and it may be other federal money besides the FEMA reimbursement, then we have to make sure that what we do is compliant with whatever this chapter of the federal Code of Federal Regulations is. I don't have it in front of me. Anyway, so we got to put together something, and we're working on that. And
yeah, I don't know if I'm so excited about doing a $250 purchase policy with different things, getting that nitpicky about stuff.
well, it's important to me, at least, that what we come up with, it works for our town, as well as satisfying those areas. You know, that 12-page letter we had from FEMA went through, you know, their whole process, very detailed. You understand what where the issues are, and the bureaucrats that are involved in doing that are have a process that they use that you have no misunderstanding as to what it takes to comply with the federal regulations, and that's their job, is to make sure that what they do complies with the federal regulations, not whether the regulations make sense or whatever. So it's certainly my intent that as we put something together, that it not handicap us as a town as an ability to operate. And some of those provisions might be a little challenging, so we've got to find a way to satisfy it without, as you say, putting every $250 purchase out to 18 bids.
Right, exactly. And I did this morning, I did just see the April 23rd email that came in from Bob.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. And I'm trying to think here. Oh, okay, yeah. One thing I want to go back to, the engine 4 was damaged because of slippery road backing out of. We don't routinely put chains on our equipment, correct?
We have drop down chains
The automatic
on the
chains?
truck.
Right.
However, they only work in forward.
Ah, okay.
We do have one truck that if it's going to be a bad storm, engine 1, that we have a set of chains for, that we chain that up. You know, if they say that there's going to be a northeast snowstorm coming in, that we normally chain that up. This particular case, the storm came in, it was a little worse than was projected as far as it goes. There was 2 on the truck. There wasn't a huge turnout as far as people. There was a fire alarm activation. They were going down into Elm Point, which is a very windy,
It's a challenging
small,
area.
challenging road, and they chose to take the engine in that particular case because there was only 2 of them. If they had got down in there with one of the smaller vehicles and that's all they took, they wouldn't have the firefighting capabilities with them for that particular case. As they were backing out of the road with person backing up, the truck actually sat. They couldn't see the ice, obviously, underneath the snow. The truck actually set over and rubbed against the tree that was above them.
Yep.
And in most cases, you worry about the truck going off the side of the road. But when you have leaning trees, that's something out of the whole case.
So that brings up another thought to me. All these private roads, which is one of the ones that we were on here, this Elm, right? Access for equipment is, if you want to get equipment in there, is pretty important. It's not town roads.
Right.
So how often are we engaged with homeowners in these areas where you might go out and say, you know, this tree needs to come down because we can't get equipment in here well?
We say it, but there's no law that.
No, there isn't.
that
That's,
is
no,
for
that's,
that.
that's right.
A lot of homeowners will look at, taking out a tree that may be an issue, but in a lot of cases, they obviously don't want a roadway where there's a driveway to get to their property. They like to be somewhat secluded. And that in turn falls, on their house insurance and stuff as far as, if the place is lost, then it's basically gone now, as far as it goes. But we try the best we can as far as to put things in place to keep from damaging the bigger equipment and stuff like that. We've been responding out when possible. For example, Carolyn Shores, during this, probably a day after this last incident, so as far as storm-wise, we had a fire alarm activation in there. And in a lot of cases, people didn't plow because they either got caught without plows on or they've taken stuff off for winter time. We ended up having to go all the way into Carolyn Shores for a fire alarm activation. We were able to accomplish that by using the 4-wheel drive rescue truck to get us down in there and given the size up. If we had to, we could have committed everything and then got it out later from there. But that particular truck saved us. Going down in, there was a vehicle that was parked in the road from someone that was checking on someone, which was, you found that ended up being a hindrance, but we worked around that. So you do whatever you can in the different situations to do the best you can to meet what you need to do. But yes, we're definitely looking at not damaging the equipment.
Well, and protecting the equipment's important, but I'm thinking before you protect the equipment, being able to get in to deal with an issue is the most important thing.
Right.
And in this case, the equipment was damaged coming out, which was unfortunate, but not a showstopper.
Right.
But if you were in a situation where you couldn't actually get in there and you had an active fire going on, place is burning, and for lack of cutting a tree down, we can't get a piece of equipment in.
In most cases, people are very, very decent about it. And in the wintertime, it's very tough. Driveways go from, being fairly large to shrinking right in. So
Well, you
that's
also
all
have some
stuff
guys that bring their snow plows on their pickup trucks to help you out. So
Yeah,
you have a good team there.
we do everything we can to access. So, Can't have superhighways into everywhere.
We should have to have a ladder truck for 10-story buildings.
Right,
Hopefully we don't have anything.
right.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
efforts.
All right, thanks, Chief. Chief Shigori, come on down.
Good morning, Chief.
How are you?
Good.
We're doing okay. Chief?
Huh?
No, we're not, are we?
Sorry,
Whatever.
I thought we were doing okay, and I looked at the clock.
yeah, that's right.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Let me know when the fun starts.
What else we have? For what it's worth. List of the breakdown of the offenses. So hold on. That's for that.
So, this says statistics through the end of February, is that right? Is this?
It's through March, I'm sorry.
All right,
And the date should have been changed. I
Yeah.
did everything but I overwrite my last one.
no, I understand, and that's what I suspected.
So it's the March 31st and it's
Yep,
today's date.
okay.
We had 6 felonies?
The rape,
Right.
the pornography, and hacking, computer invasion. I know those 3 are. I know those are 3 of them.
Okay. There was 2 computer invasions.
Yeah. I know one is. No, it's just one. It's 2 identity thefts.
Oh.
I know those are 3 of them. Got those. Involve 2 different cases.
Okay.
And obviously they both have taken a considerable amount of time. Both the pornography, obscene material, and computer hacking has got to do with, I'm not sure if the identity theft is related, but it's related to some images that we believe were distributed unlawfully. And then obviously the rape has taken a bunch of time because nowadays everybody's got cell phones. We having to jump through hoops to get, in fact, I just went to grand jury last week about some issues, but not related to that case. But
And traffic stops are up. A little bit.
Yeah,
no, the
From
down.
the last-
from last month.
From the last
Yeah,
report.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 17 was a banner year, I guess we.
No. It could be higher, but obviously when we're spending a lot of time, we've also, one of the simple assaults from, well, actually, it may end up, these numbers may change because one thing that we had is a simple assault, we're actually looking at doing it as 2 charges of simple assault now. So that's why, even though it says 1, we
Yeah.
actually review the case and it's okay, alternate theories or alternate events may require 2, so this number could go up. But that case has taken a significant amount of time too, trying to track down witnesses and corroborate their stories.
Yeah. Now, when these things happen, the county prosecutor gets involved, right?
Depends on what it is.
Okay.
The rape, yes, because the protocol now with a sexual assault is that you do a a minimum interview of the person, just to get the basics. And then what you do is you actually do a CAC, Child Advocacy Center interview recorded with a team, collaborative team. There's a county attorney started a sexual assault response team kind of concept. And I try to attend those meetings when we can and get the training going. So that's where we're at with that. So they meet as a group meeting, and then they're involved. But with the hacking, computer invasion, we've had to bounce a few things off them, but not too much. Basically,
So we're bringing the charges and we're taking it to court, is that how that works?
not anymore, because now we have felonies first. So now it used to be we would do that up until about a year ago. On April of last year, I think, is when felonies first kicked in. We used to bring them to circuit court. I still say district.
Get them arraigned.
Get them arraigned, and then you have to have a probable cause hearing, or they waive the probable cause hearing. Now, with felonies first, you bring everything to Superior Court. There's no circuit court anymore, so they are involved early on any felonies when we charge somebody. If they're not being charged, if it's an ongoing investigation, then we may have to ask some questions. In the case of the sexual assault, they are involved early because we do a CAC.
You're not trying any felonies.
Actually, no. But the only thing with felonies first that kind of is frustrating is if we arrest somebody, we have to have it done by 9 o'clock the next morning and everything in. At least a probable cause, basic, and reports. In some cases, that can be a chore to get everything collected and together. And in a case from last fall, working with Molten Borough, we elected to not arrest the person on that particular charge immediately because we needed to get some more stuff done. So it would have been, so the bad part is or if you hold them. If you don't hold them, there's time frames are longer. But it stops the whole circuit court thing of the probable cause hearing, which most of them are waived anyways. When we use them for discovery, so.
Well, probably when you started your career, superior courts in all the counties weren't permanent, they were seasonal, so.
Well, no, there were, but you could appeal anything, because when I started, you could appeal,
A parking ticket,
you
yeah.
could appeal a speeding ticket to Superior Court if you wanted to back then, but,
Then the White decision came down, that was another one.
so we, that's,
So, we don't have a female officer,
no, we don't.
so how do you handle that? Does Vicky sit on the interviews, or you go to
Oh,
the
no,
jail?
so we go to the CAC, and one of their forensic interviewers will do it.
Okay.
I mean, I've done them before. I mean, it's not unheard of. It all depends on some people relate better to other, sometimes.
Right.
It's like when we interviewed the suspect, it felt that it'd be better if a male interviewed the suspect as opposed to a female in this case, so we,
There's some flexibility.
you have to have some flexibility, but the CAC interview is a forensic interview, it's a team, and what we have now is the county attorney's office has a grant as part of the START team, the sexual assault response team, has some time and this is working with us on this. This could be, it's been a kind of serious case and major. It involves more than just our jurisdiction. They have the state police, retired detective working, I believe she's retired, working part-time. And also part of the START training is through, I know she's retired anyways, to do some of the teaching and organizing the START team. It's kind of it's a grant the state's got to kind of work on these and follow the protocols that the attorney generals have put out on it. So it's the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, so it's being used for more than just children. It's being used now and that's the standard now. And, it looks like a house, it doesn't look like a police station you're going into. The room is, like a little more user-friendly.
Right.
And it's a forensic interviewer, but there's a team that can feed questions in if need be, if something's not covered or anything needs to be done, but it's more, I think it's better for anybody in their stressful situation. It's worked good for kids, and now they're obviously looking at it from other people who've gone through traumatic experiences. Yes.
I wonder if it's a typo. I noticed you have the court information on your memo,
Yeah.
but it's not on here.
No, because as I explained before, I typically don't put my hours in on there. It hasn't involved anybody else but me, the court times.
It's still court time in my.
I understand, but, I mean, that would really,
It's still,
yeah, so it's not a typo, it's just
okay,
my hours typically I don't put into that breakout,
okay.
because it could skew that. I mean, you're really supposed, looking at whether or not your patrol officers, your primary patrol officers have enough free time to respond to calls. That's the column that matters to me the most, the one that talks about their patrol time, discretionary time, if you will.
Not to beat that horse, but my thought is that you're a micro chief, and that's a very unique position. And there are days when you're just, don't take it this way, but you're patrolling.
Oh, absolutely, I fill in, when there was sick time, I filled in. And
Yes, you do. And that's not a criticism, so
No,
I'd ask you to
you know,
consider that.
I've considered about both ways, but I kind of look at, to me, the most important column on there, to me, is whether or not there's discretionary time, because that's usually the key that people look at, is whether or not you should start looking as to, you need to whether add people or not add people.
And isn't that figure traditionally about 35%?
35% is what they're talking about, yeah. So,
Okay.
Are we gonna do hopefully you're not doing parking today, are we doing parking today?
I have no questions on parking.
Well,
But it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
I figured time-wise we wouldn't be doing it today, but
but
I did number the lines, so when we got into the
Like that.
conversation,
A little
As it was-
pagination, a little line.
Yeah, obviously that comes out when you're all done, but I remember when we were talking about before, you were talking about something about one parking space and you thought it was another page, so.
Because what happens is when we copy on our computers, it's not always the same as the
Yeah.
copy machine.
Well,
So,
no, but you were talking about Melvin and
Yeah.
he was looking at page, the first time he was referenced, and you were looking at
Right.
prohibitions.
I'm happy to wait and work on it another time.
Yeah.
I will make one observation.
Yeah,
Okay, page 4, line 20. We talked about a limit on Union Wharf Road as to where the no parking was, and that isn't in there.
oh, okay,
Okay.
yeah.
And the other thing is, we've got in here $50 per day fine for violation, which is great, but we don't address no parking areas. I don't believe at all. And what I would suggest is that we put something in about no parking areas, and that it would be appropriate to have a higher fine level for parking in a no parking area as opposed to just parking.
Oh, parking
overnight.
over a limit or something, time limit. Got it.
Right. So parking at night in an area that's restricted from night parking is $50. But let's say parking along where there's a no parking area, maybe that's a $100 fine. If we're-
So I put, one of the, highlighted this, that, I highlighted two sections, because I was not sure where we wanted to go with them, it's just something to think about when we meet again. One is about it says the intended purpose of parking automobiles belonging to owners of island property tucked in one of their guests. I don't know if that's a valid statement, it should be in there or not, on the,
Yeah,
because I know people also for day fishing might put their vehicle there too. I don't know if that's appropriate.
well, it also, the next line says, also
Also
intended for
intended. Yeah.
parking automobiles to launch a boat.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're inconsistent.
Let's see, I need to pull this back up to this, the next line should have been 28, should be right after use. And the other part of it, it's on weekends, they may be retained at the police station. The only thing with that, and I mentioned to Karen, is we don't really do petty cash, but I need to
Figure out a way to deal with that.
deal with that,
Right.
because we don't do change, like, somebody comes in to pay for, typically when somebody comes in for like a license for, we usually send them over here to get the change,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
ahead of time.
Mhm.
So we need to wait to figure how to handle that and address that.
Yep.
That's why I highlighted it, those two.
Excellent job.
Okay.
especially the last page with K, L, and M.
Yeah.
It's well worded. What is the best way to enact the final product? Do you recommend public hearing?
I think you need a
Town
public
board.
hearing.
Should have it.
It's required by law, that we
Yeah.
have a public hearing, yeah.
I think, though, first we need to have another meeting to actually go through it and.
Well, I would
there's a couple
suggest,
things.
once we get a final draft, it needs to go to the town attorney for review,
Review.
all right? And then we hold a public hearing.
Does the
before it's-
municipal association have any input? Is that
Yeah,
resource?
Municipal Association.
There is in Concord, but I don't know that,
Okay.
Oh, those people.
yeah, those people.
And there are other areas in town, like the rec area and the different parking lots. And for example, they're all handled individually, correct?
Well, they fall under, I have other parking, water access. But there is a general under prohibitions, perhaps I should put an H in and move stuff down and add about other parking areas, something in there.
Yeah, because I think people use the library for an internet hub.
Yeah, they do,
So that,
But
probably have to talk to the library about it.
how they want it.
But they're in their vehicles, so.
But it's
Well,
still a parking lot.
Sometimes people sit out there, but well, yeah, they're in their vehicles. As other stuff, I know you, Adam talked about the meeting with the camps. That was with the Alice program that Sergeant Hathcock's instructor for. That's alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. So we did that. We talked about getting maps of the camps up to date, as mentioned. We talked about the stop the bleeding. That, I know we went to that several years ago, kind of a training, and we talked about being used to Boston Marathon bombing, being able to, some lives were saved because some officers had that. And it was training that was done here just prior to Dan Doherty getting shot in Manchester. So it's from experience from the military over in Iraq and Afghanistan, where they
Yeah.
started learning about hemostatic dressings and what worked, what didn't work.
The technology and techniques that we have available today are much advanced from what they were even 20, 30 years ago in terms of
Well, the old training
preventing the bleed out.
with tourniquets was you don't do them unless it's and you're supposed to put them. And I think the program that Adam talks about that does it close, but we're taught put them up high because you just want to make sure you stop the bleeding as fast as possible. Self-administer, how to self-administer if you can.
On that note there, we're fortunate that this town is a compliment. Both you and your sergeant have extensive background in rescue and EMS and whatnot, and it shows.
But I was taught not to do tourniquets as a last resort.
That's right.
And now the thing is,
Lose a limb, save a life.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's,
things change.
what you were always taught in the old days is, once you put a tourniquet on, you don't take the tourniquet off. And so what that might do is endanger the limb. But if the choice is endanger the limb or endanger the life, you have to broaden your view out a little bit and do what you can to prevent a bleed out.
Our server was done last week. There's still a few minor things like indexing needs to finish and backups need to be up to date. Still is, but it was done. Everything seems to be working. It's just indexing isn't done. So trying to find files has been a little challenging. We have also I got prices on the radar signs. One of them sent me something that was totally, it's like on wheels. It was wheels like a dolly, you move it. I'm like, that's not exactly what we were talking.
Right.
But did
Well,
get some prices.
you had a price for one that's a pole mounted one.
We had
last
a
fall, right?
price that Karen had got,
Right.
and then we got another price about the same. I've got two other prices about the same, but I got one that's significantly cheaper from somebody I met at IACP last fall when I was down there. About $1,400 cheaper, I think. Not when you're all by the time you get it, but it's about at least $1,000 cheaper. So I'll be talking to them again to make sure I understand exactly what's with it, nothing missed. One of the prices was cheap, sort of, but they you have to, like, you don't have to, but part of the package is a software suite to do like your 85% and all that. And it's cloud-based and it's subscription-based, so of course they want you to
Keep on going.
keep on going, and I asked what happens
It's
if
a
you don't.
Gillette model, yeah.
What if you do, what if you don't? Well, no, you still keep you still have your stuff, but you don't have access to that. And it's also, it's got a couple neat things to it, like it actually does the data by cellular, so you don't have, so if something were to happen, it also takes pictures too. But I said you can't have pictures in New Hampshire, we can't
Right.
do that, so I had to kind of, well, you can shut that off. It was kind of frustrating because I know I've had this conversation with them. But anyway, the other one was cheaper and seems to be a good product, so I'll be confirming everything with them, and I make my recommendations after that.
And how about the trailer?
The trailer's working, ready as soon as we dry up a little more probably. Shoulder's still a little soft in spots, so
But it's ready to go.
it's ready to go. We checked it out, and then after it's checked out, I said, "Did you check it out where it wasn't plugged in?"
Right.
So we double checked it, and it's working.
Could it go in the fire station parking lot at Melbourne? Is it dry enough there?
In the parking lot,
Yep.
it could probably go there. I don't usually put it in the parking
I
lot.
know you've done it in the
Space.
past.
Yeah. Well,
I usually put it in the roadway out in front or something.
yeah.
So
And certainly some areas are still muckier than others, but they're
yeah, it's trying.
we're probably getting to the point where
Yeah.
you can find
Put it
a
up.
location to put it up.
Yep. Drug take backs this Saturday, 10 to 2. That's it's something, one of the things we do. Carroll County Coalition for Public Health has worked with us on that. Well, we worked with DEA on it, and I still gotta find out where our letter is for our waiver, but anyway. Waiver from some of the rules that they're supposed to do every year, every time.
Well, there have been a lot of announcements on TV, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
I have a funny feeling that even if the waiver isn't signed, I doubt the Attorney General's office is going to be
Yeah.
too upset. But they assured me the letter's coming. So anyway, because if you don't have the letter, you have to have 2 people present at all times, and you have to 2 officers, and you're supposed to transport it directly to the destruction site. Versus now with this, they waive it to 1 officer, and you can relay it to another set of
Site.
officers, which we do Monday. So what happens is next Monday morning, I have to get it at a certain time to the transfer site.
and the drug take back is Saturday
Saturday,
at
10
the
to 2.
transfer
At the
station,
transfer
10 to 2.
station. Yep. So it's done. One of the other things coming up is a project that, I guess, NISTA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, working with Fire and Motor Vehicles, has brought a program from other states here called Safe Stop. Operation Safe Stop's got to do with school buses and people that pass school buses with the lights and the signs out. So that's going to be coming up in May. We're going to have a day.
I saw that email, and it went out from the school district, right, to the
Yes, the school
towns.
district.
So,
Well,
and I'm kind of head slapping the idea that we have people that drive past stop school buses in this town. Maybe.
well, that's one of the things. It was kind of the way it was rolled out. It was a little confusing because they said there's like 10 towns. It's a trial. This is the first year they're trying it in the state, kind of thing. And then they said 8 others jumped on, so we're now at 18. And that email went to Vicky, who forwarded it to me, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle. I didn't see it, and so we had a meeting actually right here in Tufton Borough, Manchester Chiefs, and and the guy made his presentation from NISTA, and somebody asked what towns were involved, and he said it's in the emails I sent out. So, and hindsight, it came out that it was here in this district, it was one of them. So found later, and then it was catch up to get up to date. I did talk to transportation. They're going to get me the time, the locations and places, and They typically see
But
it.
we actually have people driving around stop school buses in
They,
this
they
town.
say that on,
Well, the bus drivers would be the people that knew,
yeah,
certainly.
that's the idea behind this. The bus drivers will say, these are the places that we have a problem, and on that particular day, we're gonna assign some people to give a little extra attention to those locations. And it's partnered, I mean, I've talked to state police and the sheriffs if we need more officers to do it. So, that was largely it. The other part is working with the Carroll County Coalition. Public health was also prevention. They have prevention, although their funding got cut back, but they're still a prevention coordinator. And the other thing that started up, talking about changes in the court, is drug court starting up. Has started, I think, last week, 2 weeks ago. So we had a meeting about that last month. That's gonna be for certain people that meet certain criteria. They have to go through an intensive program with treatment. They have like, I wanna say there's 10 contacts a week or 7 contacts a week between either court or probation or law enforcement. They get random, they have to call in a number and they find out if they do a random drug test, and it's when it follows the protocols, and this is my concern, is this, we weren't given some of the resources that other counties have gotten. When they follow the protocols, it's done right, it's been proven to be effective for those people and that meet that criteria. But they tend to be high risk, people that have seriously addicted and high risk. It's not and high risk of reoffending. So it's not the low risk person or the person who's not likely to reoffend. Anyway, so we'll see how it works out. I'm hopeful it works out. I shouldn't say it that way. I'm hopeful it works out, but we weren't giving any extra time for probation, so it's going to pull a probation officer away from their regular duties. Whereas, and I asked the question, Justice Nato came up to talk about it. She's the head of the Superior Courts, and I said, is there any extra? Because they got funding for the court part, they got funding for the treatment part, but the big part of the supervision, but she feels that it's going to be a reallocation of time. These are people that they would have been dealing with in the normal caseload, so their caseload moves. And I'm not sure about that.
Is there anything the selectmen can do to assist you in your supporting this program?
No, we'll see. That's my only concern, is we weren't given more probation time to deal with it. I think that's what I've heard in other counties. If the caseload gets too high, the probation officers, they can't necessarily do the rest of the contacts a week. That makes it effective.
Well,
But they get intense treatment, and it's great when it works.
we obviously have an issue in this county. We're not exempt from it. Didn't they just have a death in the jail that was related to
I
overdose?
don't know why, but there was a death in the jail, yes.
Yes.
So that's something new, and obviously it'll be I don't think it's going to affect us a lot, because it's really going to affect probation. It's going to affect the sheriff's department, because they're going to have to assign somebody to it. And we do have a drug task force working in the county now. It's just for Carroll County. It's been pretty busy with stuff, and it's kind of the news that's going on.
Okay.
I have one thing to bring up. You have a job performance review in one of your offices
Yep.
due this month?
Yep.
Work in progress.
Yep, I'll be done.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Now we have,
Is he outside? Is it Josh?
yep, come on down, Josh.
Come on in. I'm Lloyd Wood. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, absolutely. Josh, Bill Markison, nice to meet you.
How are you doing today?
I'm well. Good day for a drive.
Yeah, people go to the drive.
Where did you have to travel from?
I live in Portsmouth, so it's just head to the office in Chichester after here. So if this was last Monday, it would have been a whole different drive.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It would have.
Yeah.
Good timing on your
Yes.
part.
Wow. So yeah, Karen said you guys had some questions about the options you have for making the town assessing data available online. So
There was,
I'm here to answer whatever questions you have in whatever capacity. I told Karen on the phone this will be the worst sales job ever, because just here to answer
Now,
questions.
it's my understanding that what we're looking at here will provide the general public with access to the assessment card information online the same way that subscribers get it today. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, if you do, yeah, this is for the expanded configuration there, exactly. So just to, in terms of background, your data is available online now, limited to people who don't wish to purchase a subscription so they can see. I don't know if you visited the site, you can huddle around here, we can look if you have questions, but so they can see assessments, building assessment, land assessment, features, location and acreage, and who owns it. Beyond that, if you wish to see like details of the building, like when it was built, the square footage, stuff like that, or the breakdown of current use, picture of the building, stuff like that, you need to currently under the town's availability, the user needs to purchase a subscription from Avatar to see more than that. So this option here would make it so that everybody, whether they purchase a subscription or not, would be seeing all access to all tabs of data. If that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Including whatever personal data is on there, the property owner.
Right. Right now, the full owner address is available because the I think Karen can correct me if I'm wrong. That was something you guys wanted to have available. This and just Karen and I had spoken on Friday as far as some numbers. There's 131 towns that are currently available online in some capacity. We have, I lose track because we've been adding several, but there's probably five communities that said we don't want our information available in any capacity, even if it's not costing the town a nickel. We just don't want it up there. Fine, no problem. So beyond that, there's 131 municipal databases that are available. Of that, 35, or about a quarter, have this public access that you're considering here. Those are the towns that said, we know that the users can purchase a subscription, but we want everybody in the town to have the same access without people signing up for a $25 subscription or whatever it is for a month. So about a quarter of them have public access, and then about 5% have the full address available, the full owner address. So back to your question about the personal details. There's nothing about exemptions or credits on there, but yeah, if you consider the full owner mailing address of personal detail, then 5% of the towns have opted to do that. Our initial, this whole site dates back 2003 or so, when it first became available. In fact, the whole sort of pricing model dates back to then, because originally we said, here it is, it's available, and all the towns said, that's great, but we don't have the money to pay for it. So we revisited and said, well, the people who ought to pay for it are the ones to whom the access, the easy access is worth the most, and those are the banks, the appraisers, surveyors that find it worth purchasing a subscription to. So they're the ones that are most, 75% of the communities are subsidizing the access for everybody else. So it sort of works for everybody. So the initial thing back then, when it first started, was to not make the owner address available. Just because at the time people were a lot less comfortable. I don't know that anybody's really comfortable now, but we didn't want this to become a site where somebody could just sit there and figure out, find everybody that had vinyl or didn't have vinyl siding and get all their mailing addresses and send them an offer for vinyl siding. That wasn't what we were in the business to do, as you guys are our customers. So that's why the number of towns that have said, yes, we want the full address to be available is a definite minority. Of those, if we went and asked everybody now, I'm sure more would do it. It's as much an information thing as, knowing it's available as deciding one way or another not to make it available. But that's sort of the breakdown of where things are now. And so, yeah, as far as the personal details of the full owner address, a lot of them you could probably glean from the parcel location is shown there, so if there's a building on there and the parcel location, you could probably guess the owner's address even if it wasn't available.
So with a subscription, you get the personal address?
In either case, they get the full
either
mailing
case.
address, right? If we went in now and said I'm a guest user without a subscription, you have access to that general tab, which shows the owner information and the parcel assessments. So with or without a subscription now, the full address would be available, yeah.
So the substantive change
It's
is just the detail on the...
It's
on
to
the
make the
assessment
full
card?
assessment card available, and you actually, you can,
If the option is we don't want anybody to have access to the full mailing address, I could go back to the office and have them turn that off now, regardless of whether you do this other option to make all of it available without subscription. So there's a few little menu options that we can change regardless of whether you opt to do this or not. If that answers your question, or
Yeah, it makes
Okay.
me feel better. I mean,
Okay.
I don't mind having the information available.
Right.
I'm just uncomfortable with the selectmen as representatives of the town putting this massive amount of data about our town out there on the internet. It just-
In that the mailing address specifically, or all of it?
Well, personally, all of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to change my mind.
well,
Yeah.
it,
I mean, if it's...
here I guess is the rub, if you will. It's all public information. The question is, how do you access it?
Right.
Do you access it through the web portal, or do you access it by calling and talking to Karen or Jackie and saying,
Right.
oh, I need a copy of this assessment card? And
Sorry.
as it is today, the answer is they call the office. Somebody will call the office and say, can I get this information?
And to be honest with you, that from my end, that would be the most beneficial for me, that saves, because people, I actually didn't, like you said, you know how you said when people originally signed up, the mailing addresses weren't included? I didn't know that, Phil.
Right.
And I finally had someone call me. People probably just put up with it, and then someone that's a subscriber called and said, I'm paying for this, but I can't see the mailing address. And I said, oh, and then I called you guys and found out it was an option.
Right.
I
So
didn't
that's
know it was
an
something that we
information
could.
thing we need to be better about letting people know. But yeah,
Oh, I didn't mean
Yeah.
it as a criticism.
No,
I
it's-
just
it's-
meant that's
it's-
how I found out,
I'll like the
Why did they
criticism.
need the address?
That's a good question. I don't know why. And to be honest with you, in my position, I'm not allowed to ask why.
Really?
Right.
So
Like,
somebody
right to
calls
know
up and
is
says,
totally, you
I
can't ask
want-
why.
I want Chip Alby's physical and mailing address, you can't ask them why?
No, you actually can't as part of the right to know law.
And if they came in to ask for the
So the
card or
right
the
to,
counter, it
no,
would be
it's not
there.
part of the right to know law. The right to know law does not include anything about private citizens, anything. So if someone called up and said, I need to know Bill Stockman's mailing address and physical address, you have absolutely the right to ask why. There's nothing in the right to know law that addresses
And perhaps
information other than governmental information. So I'm just,
maybe
and
that's
I'm not
something to
trying
talk about, because I've always been taught I can't ask why.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you can.
Well,
And actually, you can ask why if they ask for our information. That,
the right to know law identifies, in terms of information that's protected, certain classes of information. I don't think mailing address is one of those. I know email address is one, but there's
You're
a
right.
long list of things, but I don't think the mailing address
And
is protected.
And certainly if they came to the counter, that mailing address would be on the assessment card.
Thank you for expanding on that. You're right. That's
Yeah.
right. It's not something that's protected. That's correct.
So,
it's not even addressed. So the premise of 91A was to present to the public governmental activity.
Right.
So are we assuming that assessment cards are governmental activity?
Yes.
It's a public record, yeah. Just like the deeds are public records, okay?
Are they?
Property transaction deeds, those are all available.
No, I appreciate that.
Right, same thing.
Excuse me.
But I think it's a stretch to say that we're delving into 91A.
Well,
And I'm still uncomfortable with having the town as an active agent and putting out information to that extent. I mean, if somebody wants to come here and search records, that's one thing, but, you know, we're an aging community. I know people personally who've been affected by Jamaicans or Nigerians or whoever it is that calls up on a scam, you know, lottery or
Right.
some other.
I got 2 of those calls last week, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they didn't get it off any assessment.
Well, I have no
record.
idea. but
Because there's nothing about
an
phone
easy-
number here.
An easy,
Yeah.
an easy reference would be, hey, here's $1 million
Yeah.
property on Lake Winnipesaukee. Maybe I'll make a phone call there. I mean, they've got
Yeah.
money, probably money to spare.
Right, and it is back to your question of the personal aspect of it. There's nothing about exemptions or credits, so if there was somebody with an elderly exemption out there, it's not showing, regardless of which option you choose or whatever like that. So stuff like that, I don't know where it falls in the right to know and stuff like that, but it's not available on the website.
I have a couple questions.
Certainly.
The tax cards that we have, you go on the computer.
Yep.
What would it cost to put those online so someone can?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
That's $2,700 a year.
Yeah. Right.
That's right.
Okay.
there's one option I will mention. There are some communities that have a vendor for their mapping programs. I think we've talked to you about maps about something else.
And that's, we're working in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So Ashton in our office gave you some cost for that. These other towns, they have access to the cartographic system, Cartographic Associates, I think they're CAI now. And in those communities, it's a slight distinction, but we do have an option to export the assessment cards to individual PDFs. It's an automated thing. So in that case, you're right. You're saying this information from the assessment cards is what we're talking about here. The only qualification I would add is there's another option. If you wanted to say, forget the Avatar site, we're going to either do it ourselves or through some other vendor, we do have an option where you could crank out the actual, they would look like the assessment cards that they get over the counter in a PDF form. So if that was the question, that option is available too.
And that's tied into the GIS.
Right, yeah, but
Right.
mostly because it provides the sort of front end for people to query and then say, this is the parcel I want,
Right.
right? If somebody here was some web developer or something and wanted to put a list of all the parts, you could have links for every parcel and you could click on that link and see it. It'd be a lot of tedious front end stuff for you guys to do.
You said you had 131 towns
That are available
That's
in
right.
this assessment kiosk.
and how many where the entire card is available? Did you say 35 towns?
35 where it's available without subscription.
Okay.
Right, yep.
How many towns are converting to this each year? Just a couple or?
It's this thing being the whole assessing kiosk or the public availability of it.
Of the former?
We pick up this year we're in the position where another software vendor recently announced significant increases in cost. So we've had a lot of their
And how-
towns come over. So this year we're picking up 8 towns probably.
Okay.
And all of those will be available in some format, whether it's for public or not. So by the end of the year, it'll probably be.
Do you have any
140.
idea what the most common information that's requested is? Do you have any way of counting that?
Yeah. You mean by the users of the site
Yes.
themselves?
I mean, for example, we've only had 10 people that wanted to know X.
Yeah.
Do you understand the question?
I do. I don't know if this will answer it. Let me.
Well, maybe off the top of your head if you have a
Yeah.
sense.
You sort of need to differentiate between the towns that are The most information is off the general tab. They click and they see the assessment, who lives there, and that's because it's available in every town, regardless of subscription, right? So that's going to be the lion's share, and that's probably what most people want to know. What's my neighbor assessed at? What am I assessed at? What's the guy down the street? Oh, okay, that's fair, or no, I need to find out more. Beyond that, it's the building and the picture for people either that have subscriptions or the towns where it's publicly available.
A couple of other questions. Is there one or two or three pieces of information that a lot of the towns ask not to be included? Like address, mailing address?
Well, initially that was the address was something people didn't want, which is why it was the default setting. Right.
Now, there's a difference between the 911 address number
Right.
and what your address is.
Yeah, actual mailing
although
address.
it may be the same.
Exactly. And that's where if somebody looked and saw a building and could guess that, yeah.
It could be a little confusing where the little town of Tuftonboro has 3 mailing offices and 472 Governor Wentworth Highway, Tuftonboro, New Hampshire. I would never get them.
Right.
The next thing is, how do these towns go about this? Do they just one day decide to just do it, or do they have a public hearing, or go to town meeting and have?
That's Karen would probably. I mean, it just is a sort of case study. At some point, you guys asked us for the price. You know, when we with these new towns that we're making available, we present it as an option in the initial agreement. For towns that have been with us for a decade or more, it's generally you knew it was available, and then you said, either you or the selectmen or whomever said, what would it cost to make this publicly available? And that's a judgment you guys make as far as whether it's worth it based on how much time you're spending. Some towns want to still get the $1 copy fee or something they charge, so they say don't make it available. So those are arguments that as far as why most towns come to us, it's because the people in the town are saying this could be a value, or they're getting enough questions of people calling, why can't I get this online? Why can't I get this online?
Have you had any communities in the last 3 years that have stopped doing it?
No, not that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Not that I recall.
Okay,
most of the ones that aren't available have not been available since sort of day one and just kept going that way.
And are you aware of any specific RSAs or best policies? Do you know of anything that the state of New Hampshire is considering as far as specific RSAs that cover this?
I'm not. No. My boss years ago was more involved with the public right to know and stuff like that, and he's had more arguments and discussions with folks about that. I'm not. I'm more of a database type
So what are
person.
we currently paying for what we got?
For the online aspect,
What we get?
0.
0?
Yeah, and it's available to, and we can look at it here, that if I come in and if I want to look at somebody's parcel, I can see this information. I can connect it as a guest. That's sort of, so I can see, I can search the town, I can search by owner or parcel ID, and if I want to click over to see what property taxes are due, I can see that. But if I click on the land or the building tab, of course this doesn't have building, as a guest user, it says you need to purchase a subscription. But all of this I can see now, and the town is not paying Avatar anything for this service now. If I were logged in as a subscriber, I could see all the details of this information just as if I were standing looking at the assessment card. So making these tabs available without a subscription is the...
So I could go to my computer
Yep.
and punch in a certain amount of information and know his house,
You can know his assessment.
his assessment.
Yep. Right.
So this additional information is gonna cost nothing? I mean, Avatar is gonna charge us for opening this up.
The $2,700 here on this is so that if I went in as a guest user, meaning I do not have a subscription, then I could see all aspects of the assessment
And how
card.
much, do you have a record of how much subscription money we've brought in?
You don't bring in
That
any
they
subscription
people
money.
pay that.
That's what we keep to make this available,
How
and
much?
to,
Okay,
we probably get 50,000 a year across all towns. If
Right.
Tuftonboro wasn't there, we'd probably still get $50,000, and it probably costs us that much to schlep data around and
Right.
keep the web server. So we're not making a killing off this, but we make it available.
Like a maintenance fee.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of worked for both sides of the equation, because up until now, you guys haven't paid anything for it, and it's probably keeping the most consistent users. You know, if there's somebody around here that wants access to this data, they can purchase that for $150 a year. Otherwise, they'd be here asking you for cards or calling you, emailing them for
So
cards.
is there, okay, is there a way you can tell us how much or how many subscribers there are we're talking about?
I don't have that now. I could. It's a little bit. I'm not sure how. If you went to buy a subscription, you can buy a subscription for one town, or for more money, you can buy it from all towns. So anybody that's purchased a annual subscription for all towns would have access to Tuftonboro, whether they wanted it or not, or whether they would have paid for it individually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could tell you the number of subscriptions just to Tuftonboro.
Or no, I mean,
Sure.
all towns. would be
Yeah,
fine.
let me see the, he emailed me that the other day. Yep, let me pop into that, and I don't know the Tuftonboro, but I can,
Well, I'm assuming the Tuftonboro would be included in the all. so-
right. But there could be somebody who said, I only want a subscription for Tuftonboro, yeah.
Can they say only for Carroll County or only for the school district?
No, they can purchase individual towns, but at some point you might as well get it for everything, yeah. Oh, there we go, 229 subscribers for everything as of Friday. So it's not a ton of people, but it's the ones that are,
They repeat.
right,
repeat
they're
users, right.
appraisers, they're
That's
real
30.
estate
That's
agents,
30 per county.
yeah. I mean, co-ops maybe fewer, but yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's assume that everybody that wants to get into Tuftonboro buys a subscription for all towns. Just to make it easy, because you can't
Okay.
pull out Tuftonboro. All this is doing is benefiting 229 people.
Well,
Well, it's saving 229 people some money.
Yeah,
It's also now saying, if in terms of benefit, whoever didn't feel it was worth buying a subscription, they would now have access to the same information. So I don't know how you qualify
How
benefit
many-
there. Financially, yeah, it's 229 people, and in all honesty, fewer than that. Because no offense to Tuftonboro, but I guarantee, like Merrimack is 10% of the usage of the site, just because there's more people there. So
and how many phone calls do we take a year, Karen? I mean,
oh, a year.
or a month, or a day? And
It,
when-
it can be random. Some weeks can be more than others. One day can be 4 to 5. That might be a stretch. One day might be 3 to 4, but a whole week sometimes might only be 5.
Yeah.
It depends on.
So one a day.
Let's say one a day.
So we're talking 250, so there's like 500, 600 people that.
And some people come in and use the computer
Well,
themselves.
this is true, and and they come in and they pay the $1 for the paper copy. But just to clarify, these people that he's speaking of that are subscribers aren't contacting me.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
Just
right.
Right.
Just to-
yeah, 'cause
okay.
they don't have to.
Correct. Yeah, and when I email them a tax card, that's typically the majority. Or I email, as I mentioned to you, spreadsheets if people ask me for, if there's a logging company that wants 20 plus whatever the acres.
You want to get the abutters, and those are the abutters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stuff like that. That's
so you can,
done differently, but.
yeah.
I,
Or when
I think having it all computerized, and I was here when I was a selectman when
Yeah.
Avatar came on board, is a great idea, because it does save time, and work time, space, and paperwork, and all the rest of it. For this operation, which is the operation of town government. I don't feel obligated to be convenient to anybody but the people of Tuftonboro. And I don't see that this is.
I fully appreciate your point, and you do not need to direct it at me.
I'm only directing it
I
at
know,
you there.
but this is what I'm saying, this is the worst sales job. We have all of these options because of conversations like these, and every board and every selectman needed to find the equilibrium they were comfortable with. But for every conversation where somebody says, I don't feel comfortable providing this access, I've had as many or more saying, why can't Avatar provide this access? This is 2018. What are you kidding me? We can't, look at this town. They have it. So I will walk out of here.
You're fine.
My point is to answer your questions and make sure you guys are comfortable. And whether you guys, I'm not trying to sell you this. I'm not trying to convince anybody anything. Right. So these are the options. I'm just trying to highlight that. Yeah.
So directed.
No, I'm happy to have the conversation. I'm not trying to sell you anything.
I mean, we can go either way, and I'm just not, I'm not on board with putting it all out there. Maybe it's just the recent developments on the interweb, as I call it. But I just don't feel comfortable with it. If you guys do, that's fine. I mean, that's why we don't have to have consensus.
That's exactly right. No, and I use this system in a lot of towns, and to me as a user, it's.
And I have to be honest, I have
it's
never
convenient.
gone online or
And
even.
I
just don't do it.
It's a more efficient way for me to get the information
Right.
that I need than having to, I can do it on a Saturday night instead of, I gotta wait till 10 o'clock on Monday morning when somebody's
Yeah.
in. So, and I don't think I'm the only person that's true for, but it isn't all about me either. It's about, I think, using the tools of technology and having information available to folks.
So our company does both software and assessing. So in 60 or so communities, we're the municipal assessor, and when we do updates, revaluations in municipalities, every 5 years or whatever, we make this available. We'll send out notices saying, here's what your value is, your preliminary notice of value, and here's a website where you can go to look at it, and we make it available, all tabs for 45 days or whatever. So more as a way of conveying information, because it helps. It's useful for the assessors and the data collectors when people come in to have questions about it. If those people can come in having seen their neighbors, why is this different? And some of them come in with reports off of here. They print out a card and just, here's the guy down the street. Why is mine worth more than he? It's more in terms of transparency and making that information available.
Yeah.
So there's that benefit to it as well. I don't know what the dollar amount is for each of those, right? But there is certainly, like you're saying, that sort of transparency.
Yeah, it seems to me that with the towns that have the GIS access and tying into the
Yep.
assessment cards on that what's available directly at this portal is less than it used to be. For instance, Wolfboro used to have the full assessment card at this portal.
Okay.
Okay, now I think you get the full assessment card when you go to the GIS portal.
Right, because they had that PDF.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
And so there's some sort of there's somewhat of a shift, and again that's a more accessible option because you're looking right on parcel.
Right. It's more about whether you're searching
and then the data is
tables.
available.
Yeah. Exactly.
And some towns, I mean, it's not just the assessment cards, it's the history of building permits and all kinds of stuff is all online.
You don't feel comfortable with this, let's go to some other.
Right,
I'm not suggesting that or commenting, yeah.
I got a question
Yeah.
over here.
Oh, this is disclosure.
Yes.
When Mark Howard put together the Conservation Commission map program, the first time with LRPC, all of this was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he since came up with something better for everything else that we were trying to do. It was show how it still has property boundaries on it, but it doesn't have the tax type. And that's what's on our website. But for a while, the other one was on our website, and I still have it. I use it all the time for Conservation Commission stuff. Just finding out where you're going or where this landowner is that you just talked to, or I use it almost weekly. And the subscribers send me some piece of, send me personally some piece of junk mail, at least once a week. A realtor obviously saw my tax card that says I'm a shorefront owner, or obviously saw that I'm in current use. Sometimes the acres are even there. So, you know, somebody's already got a lot of access.
Yeah.
So if somebody's determined to get that information, they gotta get it.
And they do
Kinda
call
like a
that
gun.
sometimes.
Yeah.
That got dark quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are 11 towns, so what is that, 8% or so, that have a map tab enabled to within this. So it's similar to that cartographics thing that you talked about more from, but yeah, so if as that other project progresses or doesn't, that may be an option as well. Or some of the, I know, the part of that was to get shape files for the maps going forward, so that would be an option.
Right. Because we have
But-
to change the, Susie Weeks is
Right,
retired.
right. Exactly. All right, any more questions for Josh?
Yeah, is there anything you
You've answered
need?
my question, sir.
Sorry, I did, or?
You have.
Okay, perfect. If there's anything I need to follow up with or other things you think of, Karen has contact
Okay.
information.
Super.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Coming in.
Sure. If anybody calls from the office, I'm here all day. No, headed down the road.
All right.
Especially on a nice day.
That's right. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a
Yes,
decision
likewise.
today, or
Thanks for your
do
time.
you want this to
Let me know.
illuminate a little bit?
We might as well expression our mind.
Yeah, no, I'm,
Sneak it under the.
huh?
I'll start off with my comments.
Yes, sir.
First of all, every community that I've gone to thinks it's a good idea. So, on face value, I was in favor. We talked about it at the other meeting. No one has come to me pro or con. I look in the budget, for example, I guess this would go under financial administration, and it's only $2,700, but we've already spent 35% of our budget there, and this is a pretty lean budget, and we're only a quarter of the way through the year. My other thought is, if we really want to do something that, I have a couple comments.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the budget, I can elaborate on
I
that.
have a couple, unless it's gonna go someplace
It
else.
is, yeah.
Where is it
It's
gonna
already
go?
put in there, actually. It's already been put
It's
in.
in the budget for this year.
Where is it?
I think it's under software, right? So,
Yeah.
agreements,
Yeah.
whatever it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're still, the bottom line is we're still past the 25% mark. I do support the clerical assistant. I think the sooner we get that person appointed and get them trained, that would help alleviate some issues. I'm prepared to vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second? I will second it. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
This is to allow access to guests.
It's
No,
to,
universal access.
yeah, right, to allow,
Meaning universal. Some people have subscriptions.
Right.
If you have guests,
right.
you're,
It allows everybody to have access to the assessment card information
I think
online.
ends the subscription part.
does it end the subscription to
For
other?
No, it doesn't,
Tuftonboro
yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
It could for Tuftonboro.
Why would people get subscriptions?
Because there
If they have
are
access.
131 towns
Right,
online, okay?
Oh,
So
yeah, it doesn't end.
So-
You're right, I'm sorry.
those towns that have full access available to everybody, you don't need a subscription for. But for the rest of the towns.
So it covers everything.
Right. And
For the
it sounds to
professional
me
users,
like, Josh had said that you can buy a one-town subscription, okay, at so much, all right? But once you buy, let's say, 2 or 3 one-town subscriptions, you probably paid the cost of a full subscription for all towns as a subscriber.
So it'll end the one-town subscription
Right,
with Tuftonboro.
all right.
So you pay $2,700 a year for the system
Yep.
That might be the prorated cost, but I can't remember.
program?
It's actually, yeah, I think it's prorated down.
It'll be
because
even less now,
It's a partial year.
Yeah.
And the fee would be on an annual basis, calendar year, correct?
Right.
So is it 2,700 on a calendar year
I'd have to look at the
or
paperwork.
something? Okay. You
Yeah.
pay a fee, this doesn't add anything to it.
Pardon?
He said there's zero cost, there's no additional cost to make it universal.
Well, that's the 27 or whatever.
That's the town subscription cost, right, to make it available to everybody.
We pay Avatar currently already for just our whole assessing database. That's a separate cost.
Okay.
This amount is
It's
for
an
online
additional
access.
$2,700 to maintain a universal access.
Right.
And maps, that'll be good for,
It's not about the money.
well,
Was
we have some tax
27 was
things.
27 already
And that's-
prorated, or was that the annual subscription?
That was the annual
Next
subscription.
thing
So
you know,
we're
you
talking
guys,
$2,025 for 3/4 of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's something.
That's
Yeah,
what
it's
that's
less,
what my
that's right.
computer says.
Right. All right.
okay, to do this.
Mr. Wingate.
Thank you for waiting.
Happy spring, sir.
Little, it wasn't such a nice day. It would have been
It'll be nice tomorrow.
Yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, so I read the report of the last meeting and your discussion about road maintenance, and I was stimulated.
Great. That's the purpose of this.
that's right. Did you watch the video? That,
I did not.
Joe works hard making videos, and Karen to get them up on the web
Karen's
so
trying to
everybody
get
can
her
watch them.
numbers up.
I
Yeah.
rarely have time to read the paper.
All right.
No, I'm not.
So,
Just kidding.
2009, I volunteered to be commissioner for the town of Lake Region Planning Commission. And when I started doing that, found out they were in the middle of updating the Lakes Region Plan, which is an attempt to see what community problems need solving. And a lot of it is based on an extensive amount of surveying that they did with people and town government. And transportation and road maintenance is really high on the list, both from economic opportunities and from people's wishes. From both angles, it's pretty important. Also, the time I arrived, their environmental specialist resigned under pressure because he hadn't done any of the work on the plan. New executive director came in and found this out. And it really wasn't his fault, but, so I went up volunteering to do a lot of that work. There was a lot of research, a lot of writing. So I got a lot of skin in that game. And some of it has to do with the subject. So I blew the dust off of it, which pretty much is what's happened to it.
Yep.
And I sent Karen the chapter that's on what I'm about to talk about, in case you guys
Oh,
want.
didn't get it yet. Did it come today? Did somebody send
Well, I
it
sent
today?
it before I left home this morning.
Oh, okay. I can go to my email if you.
You know, it's just in case, if they want to read it, it's there.
Okay.
So, the issue is, our weather is changing. You can give it a name that gets people excited, and you can talk about you can debate the causes, but the fact is, our weather trends are changing. We have good, solid evidence of that. And the kind of things that are changing, besides being warmer, is we get more precipitation than we did in the past, mostly in the spring and the fall, but also now in the winter. There's rainfall type precipitation. And the storm events are more intense. You get these cells of precipitation coming out in local areas that overwhelm the stormwater, what do you call it?
Drainage system.
Yeah, whatever, and problems develop. Sometimes they call these 100-year floods. We're getting more of those, if that's what it is. more often than in 100-year increments or 50-year increments, however you want to measure that. There's more frequent storm events. And then winter rain. Most of our, and you might have noticed that this year, most of our snowfalls are followed by a little rain event of some kind. That creates a lot of problems when it comes to road traction. And we get more just plain rain events in the winter than we ever did before. And this is over 100 years of, looking at our northeast weather. Deeper and more frequent freeze and thaws. That's where, you get this warm period and the frost actually comes out of the ground or comes out of the roads, and then it freezes again, often with a rainstorm in between. And this trend is accelerating. If you look at it on a graph, up until about the 50s, it's detectable, but it's not a big deal. It's just detectable if you're good at statistics. In the 50s, it starts climbing, and through the 60s and 70s, and there's an acceleration rate to that, depending on the way, what numbers you put on either side of that. But it's increasing. A lot of this data comes from the Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest, a place that I'm intimately familiar with in my career. That is one of 3 experimental forests, federal experimental forests, that were designed to look at watershed issues. Only 3 of them. And that's ours up here. It's over in Thornton, that's about 15 minutes north of Plymouth, so when you talk about weather situation, that's local. Yeah. And that data actually, it not only reinforces, but we have our temperature a little higher than average, rainfall amounts a little greater than average, so all of those things I listed from what Hubbard Brook is measuring, and they have really complex stuff up there measuring stuff. It shows that it's worse than other places in the country, and part of it, they attribute that to our proximity to the coastline. It looks like coastlines are more affected than interiors areas. So, what does this have to do with road maintenance? Storm intensity increases rainfall over short periods of time, causing localized flash flooding, erosion of hillsides, roadside ditches, gravel road surfaces, culvert failures, water quality issues in water bodies like ponds and lakes. Winter rain generally freezes and causes traction problems in the road. Freezing particles tends to break the pavement and create potholes on gravel roads. And then on top of this, we have a changing demographic going on. Tuftonboro in previous 14 years, and this data is getting a little old, this is like 4 years old now, 4 or 5 years old. Last 2 census data. Over about a 14-year period, Tuftonboro aged 10 years, got 10 years older, average citizen. Project that trend, where the numbers come from, like births and deaths versus kind of people who are moving to the area and buying home. It's going to go up another 10 years in the next 10 years. And we're good examples of it, us right here.
You're speaking to the choir.
Yeah. So, older people need better roads. They want better roads. They demand better roads. So that's kind of an issue for them. And then you have the first responders who have to service them, often in the worst conditions. They're going to need the roads too. These are all things that we pointed out in a plan that communities should be thinking about. So I'm suggesting that when we think about a change, for example, we're eventually going to have to replace that bridge on Sodom Road, and we're going to fix it, but at some point we're going to replace it.
Right.
What we put in, is it robust enough in the future to handle this increased water amount, flash flooding type thing. The ditches going down to it, are they gonna be reinforced? You know, thinking like that. Replacing a culvert somewhere, maybe we should put in a couple of inches larger culvert. These localized flooding. And then the other thing, it's not in the plan, but it seems to make sense to me, maybe a little contingency planning on budget. Not that you budget more money for increased storm effects, but maybe have a little reserve fund. Say, when we do get that wicked storm, like we had one early winter, and then we had one the year before that took out Ball Peak area, that, you know, maybe a little contingency fund to get us through that period of time.
And one of the things that I've observed some towns do, and I need to do some more investigation, but in the normal course of work, some towns work out of a number of expendable funds. And what they budget every year is just to bring the level of that expendable fund up to some benchmark. So if we have, for instance, a level of money in there for road repaving, all right, and we budget $250,000 for road repaving. That goes into this expendable fund. Then we actually expend out of that fund, and then if we only use $190,000, then that's what we budget the next year to replenish it, so that we have the flexibility. And the other thing that does, may be able to do, again, I need to look a little more carefully at what the law allows, but when I observe what some of these towns do, something like the septic replacement that we did at the library, all right? If we had an expendable fund available, then you don't have to wait to go to town meeting. That's money that you can fix it, and then in the budgeting process, you replenish it, so the next time you run into one of these things, you can deal with it, and don't say, well, we gotta wait 6 months, or if that septic had failed early in the year, it's like, yeah, you gotta wait 10 months.
Now you've got 2 septic systems.
Right.
And you spend $100 a month pumping.
Yep. Anyway, so that might be the contingent piece you're talking about. That seems like some towns use that as a way to have the dollars available to meet the need as it occurs. And certainly we've seen this past winter with the winter road maintenance events that we had an increase over prior years, and we increased the winter maintenance budget, and it wasn't enough to cover what happened already. And we have the back end of the year winter that we haven't even in December we haven't even got to yet.
We have a 25, and I could be wrong, maybe more, might be a little less, but I thought it was close to 25% increase in the winter maintenance budget.
And
And it's spent.
Yeah.
I just have to think of this. Remember what happened, the last town meeting before this last one, last year's town meeting, when the snowplow issue came up?
Fire.
You know, yeah. Hey, add another $100,000 to that, or whatever it was. You know, I mean, I think that's how people think about it.
Right, but and that's right, you're right about the demographic, you're right about the roads, even though we get older, we drive a little slower. And people are concerned about roads as a primary asset of the town. But getting back into the budget, I don't think this winter's been 25% worse than last winter.
My memory's not that good. I can say, I take care of Winter Harbor Way and pay the bills there and deal with sanding when we need it, plowing when we need it, and it was a lot worse than average there. That's not the same thing as the townwide. But one of the big things, this is a trend for us, is our sanding bill is becoming higher than our plowing bill.
Right.
Because you know, you have that little quarter inch, eighth inch of rain, and all of a sudden you got a coating of ice on top of whatever friction device you had there. Yeah, so you gotta run the sand truck down there again.
Yeah. It just would be helpful, I think, to be able to establish some cost per storm event. If there's I'm sure there is a trend. The weather is going in the direction you're telling us.
We didn't look at budgets and we didn't look at cost, and we talked about it. And part of the reason is a lot of towns or the state is coping. They're coping within whatever budget they get. So it's more of a quality issue than it is how much is it going to cost. If you establish the quality first, then some years it's going to cost a lot more than others. And maybe the years when it doesn't cost as much, who is ever making the decisions is using up the budget anyway. As a manager, I run into
Sort of
that.
a red herring. Having spent a few years in local government, I'm very rarely, I don't know that I've ever seen that happen, where, oh, it's December 15th, let's spend all the rest of the money in our budget. And
I've never worked in that environment. In fact,
I haven't either.
I was a department head, and if I could turn money back, it was your money.
It never has been an issue, well, never.
If you
It's
guys
always
are-
been an issue with the delegation at the county level, but it's, you know,
The selectmen are deciding whether to open the fund up or not. You know, then you can ask those questions. Well, why?
Well, we're asking
Why are
a
we
question
behind in the
now.
budget this particular year? And whoever asking should have to be able to come up with, we had to do this many more sandings, or had to buy this much more salt or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a matter of keeping records and a matter of making estimates and a matter of, I mean, I don't know that there are 44 or 41 storm events from January 1st till the last time I asked the question, which was 2 weeks ago. But somebody out there is keeping statistics of that sort of thing. The state doesn't just willy-nilly plow roads or not keep records of how many storm events there were to verify their overtime budgets and all the rest of it.
I think, Lloyd, you were at a TAC meeting where they were discussing how some towns actually have, where the real trouble spots are, you know, some of their hills, they have cameras set up so they can watch the traffic, and they see somebody slipping, they can get a truck out there right away instead of guessing.
They find target on it all day.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I don't know, I know that's probably a way of more than we can do. Actually, I'm not pushing for that. I'm just, we put a lot of effort into coming up with this trend thought. And I'm just here to,
Well, and I would think that the Conservation Commission, in the form of Steve Wingate, should be weighing in on these culvert replacements. I mean,
And catch basins.
and catch basins, I mean, certainly the more well.
Just look
Well,
look around Lisbon.
allied with that, the watershed study is gonna shed some additional light on some of these things as well. But, you know, the immediate takeaway, I guess, with respect to, as we're doing culvert replacements, are the ones that are going in there the appropriate size? Are we factoring in capacity to handle more water through, recognizing that if it's a little oversized, it doesn't create the problem that if it's a little undersized, it would. If you have excess capacity, the only cost you have in that is the culvert costs a little bit more to put in than one that's a little smaller. But so okay.
Great.
I have a couple of comments. And I'll go stream of consciousness. 3 out of the last 5 winters, we've had over 80 inches of precipitation during the winter months. We had 3 in a row, which is the first time it happened since the 1800s. So you are correct, sir, when the weather is changing and the type of weather. we've had 3 overflows on the pavement at Lang Pond Road that you worked on. I don't remember 3 in my previous lifetime, and I'm 70 years of age. And guess what? That was engineered properly, and people, the fire truck could get through in 6 inches, and when the water receded, the road was still there, so we've invested wisely. The truck amendment, people said, buy it. Read my lips, buy it. The guys who drive the trucks tell me that they're able to get this town opened up after a storm, sanded and salted, 4 hours less than when they used to, just using the smaller truck. The budget committee talked about adding $250,000 to the budget. At town meeting, someone stood up and raised $350,000. So you are absolutely correct that there are people out there that want the town to, in a balanced way, add money. For example, we've had 5 years of betterment easements, Sadidar Farms. That's an option for us. There's the transportation funding, the legislature isn't helping us. For example, Middleton Road to Middleton and New Durham was a cooperative effort between the town of Wolfboro and the state of New Hampshire. The frauds at the legislature did the following. They did away with $1.7 million in the 33% matching funds in this biennium for 2018-2019. Think of the projects in Carroll County that could get done, and towns are willing to step up like Wolfboro did, and we'll be talking about that. The other thing is, there was to grant the municipalities the option of attaching a fee to motor vehicle registrations, failed by 1 vote in the Senate last year. There's about a dozen towns and cities that use that, and that what happens there is we can attach to your motor vehicle registration. It has to go to town meeting. The project has to be voted on, and no, it's a yearly thing. Let me continue. We have a diesel grant that we could use to replace a diesel vehicle. We have a truck that's approaching 18 or 19 years of age, and we've already spent $6,000 this year rebuilding it. I make a copy, since I've been selectman, of every single road bill, and I break it down. It's a little bit over $74,000, but the money we get from the state, Chris Sununu and the governor worked on a thing where we got that money double, and that's outside the budget. I've asked the question, why don't we do like the seacoast communities and get storm insurance? I don't know how much it costs, but I'll investigate that. I'm one of the guys in the room that's out there at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning because of my other jobs. And I can tell you, the roads are passable. I think Jim does a great job. But he also has tried very hard to keep the cost down. And I've told him this to his face. Sometimes the Board of Selectmen play the role of dentists, of just adding a little bit more here and a little bit there. So, thank you for your efforts. And I'll speak for the board, I'll speak for myself. We support what you say, so thank you.
I appreciate that, Steve. One of the things you probably know we're doing this year is we've got a road study going on with LRPC to give us do 2 things for us. Give us a current inventory of what the condition of all the town roads are. It also plugs into a tool that allows us to, that models the wear and tear and deterioration of the pavement, and allows us to look at different pavement maintenance options, including the full repaving and rebuilding that we do, but other things as well, and models also the cost and also the impact on the ability of the roads to continue to function. So I think that's an important thing that we're gonna have to work with going forward. In my view, it's important that we maintain the roads well, but, and it's easy to say, we'll put more money, do more repaving this year. But over time, we need to do it in a way that we don't throw a little money at it here, throw a little money at there. How do we do it in a smart way that we improve the overall condition of the roads and be able to sustain it going forward? So hopefully, I'm looking forward to that road study helping us do that.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah.
This is already the focal, the points where they're gonna measure the pavement. Thank you for all that you do for
I
the
have,
town. Go ahead.
while I'm here,
Yes.
while I'm here,
While you're here.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I've had a question from the Conservation Commission member who is kind of our easement specialist, wondering if we should be doing an easement for the Cow Island lot. You know, it'd be a no development easement, like we did on the Great Meadow. Knows anything about that?
Now you're talking about the beach lot, or are you talking about the
whole-
interior lot?
The whole lot. And there could be conditions put on that, like, I know the town has allowed a couple of people to extend septic back there, and that's good, you know, that's good for the community's worth of water. So, you know, you can build that into the easement, hiking trails can be built into it, camping, you know, any of these things that you want to do. But all it does is prevent the town, some future town government from saying, hey, we could make a couple $1 million
Or commercialize it.
selling that, or even more if we subdivide the whole interior.
Build a bridge.
So it just protects it for the future, and you know, we don't have a lot of that in the islands.
Yeah. I think it sounds like it makes sense to me.
Yep.
All right,
Why don't you investigate it?
Yeah.
and then the other one is the RID. We've been working for about a year trying to do some more extensive testing. We've been working from the point of view of Wolfboro should pay for it. We have the option of paying for it ourselves just to see where it is, or a combination. Right after we talked yesterday, I have to think about, you know, maybe we should look at it some critical point and see what we put in the water, like the outlet from Mirror Lake, or 19 Woodward, but Melvin River, where Melvin River comes in, or a cove somewhere.
Would that be included in the watershed program? That
You know,
grant?
it'd be part of, you might recall that we've been reporting on this, that we found out that the U.S. Geological Survey has been doing these kind of pioneering studies on personal care items and pharmaceuticals in water. And then there is also fire retardants, another one that seems to be a big one, just from, you know, people buying clothing and then washing it in their washing machine. And it's a pretty strong carcinogen, something you want to know about. So, you know, those kind of things are what we're looking at.
Well, that your knowledge and your background with you and Larry Gill on that has already paid dividends, because the fire chief has legally got rid of all his, you know, the fire suppression chemicals.
Unfortunately, we can't take credit for that, but
But it was part of the process, so.
Yeah.
It's something of concern.
Well, I think we need to look at it for Waters and Tuftonboro, as well as for what's coming out of the RAB. And I must say that I was disappointed that after last year's discussions with Wolfboro about getting involved in this testing, that they chose to step back away from it. You know, the issues with the RIB and the solution to that is something that's going to happen.
They
but-
haven't actually stepped back from it. At the last selectmen's meeting, or the one before that, a couple of weeks ago, Linda Murray brought it up. And they're committed to,
I don't think it was, she knew about it from talking to Dave, but I think Dave just kind of put it in his budget, and he was hoping it would just fly through like that, because he wasn't sure that it would get broad support otherwise. And then when the opportunity, well, when they hoped to buy the parcel of the land, he didn't have anything budgeted for that, so he had to scrounge around in his budget. So that,
Well,
that's my understanding what happened.
regardless of all the little pieces along the way, we definitely had the indication that there was a commitment to it. If it didn't get to the Board of Selectmen, right, and get reaffirmed, then shame on them at that point. We can't change where the RIB is or where the outflow from the RIB goes. It's where it is. That ship has sailed. We need to do what we can to protect the waters, and one of the ways that we can do it is better understand what's in it. And
I guess I have to disagree that the ship has sailed, but we'll go down that path some other day. But the only place that anything is going from that RIB is into the 19-mile brook and that watershed. So that whole thing needs to be tested to get some kind of baseline, and that should be Wolfboro's responsibility. I think what Dave Ford was talking about was testing at the site. And when we brought up, when they were here, testing the whole brook, it was dismissed out of hand.
Well,
And I think that,
he wouldn't have a say in that. USGS would set up the whole protocol, and they would decide where the testing
he
is.
was paying for it, that's the point.
Well,
And that's what was dismissed out of hand.
so
And it was dismissed by both he and Murray. So
I've been talking to people behind the scenes, and I think it's doable, but we're not going to get it done with a direct approach. You owe us this, you have to do it. You know, there's a fear there. Well, what if we find this, or what if we find that? And I think the answer to that is good neighbors help each other out.
well, that's
Yeah.
that's
But-
great, Steve,
But if we're shouting at them,
the point
they're
is,
just gonna huddle
Steve,
down.
you can't make that decision. You can't negotiate that deal. And neither can Dave Ford. The only deals that can get negotiated are between the two boards of selectmen.
That's what I'm talking to
And-
you guys.
yeah,
I'm hoping
Right,
you're gonna
but-
be behind
but
whatever we
if-
can, whatever, if I can work something
But
out.
the position that I'm gonna take as one selectman is that, yeah, if something goes wrong, if there is some sort of infiltration of bad chemistry into the 19-mile brook at some later date, then it's gonna get shut down. I don't care what they may not wanna negotiate that. They may think that's just too onerous, then go somewhere else. I mean, our only job is to protect that brook. It's not to be a good neighbor. I love being a good neighbor, but that's not our job. Our job is to protect Tuftonboro from adverse things and protect its borders. So, I mean, I don't think these negotiations are gonna be all huggy-kissy, because they've already presented at this meeting here with loud voices what they were
Pretty
gonna
far
do.
away from huggy and kissy right now,
It sure is.
and it wasn't that way before.
Well, they were trying to take land in Tuftonboro before.
The past 10 years, there's an ebb and flow of hugs and kisses.
yeah.
I certainly, before I was a selectman, there was everything but guns being drawn. So,
Good
So,
idea.
Yeah, we were pretty militant for a while.
Well-
We saw an opportunity to work with people, and it was working.
and we all need to work to get to a solution. But the solution, we have to be focused on the impact on this community in the process. And
Well, I would say goal one is to find out what's actually in that water.
I agree.
And that's where I would shoot for goal one before I start thinking about goal two and goal three. They have no legal responsibility to do this kind of survey. If it comes out to be that there's a problem, they have no legal responsibility to do anything about it, because those are not controlled items within the New Hampshire statute.
No,
That's the point. That's the
that
point.
changes.
This is a contractual agreement. It's not a statutory agreement. They've brought themselves into a contractual situation. We're outside of the statutory requirements. They can say they don't have to do any of this statutorily, but we can certainly make it more difficult for them. And the only way that they're going to do it
Much
is
better
some
leg
sort
to
of,
stand on if we know what's coming in.
right, contractually.
Both of you folks are
Let's,
correct.
all right, let's move along.
Well, as I said, they are planning to go forward with that. They are interested in that, even though there are no regulations on pharmaceuticals and waters. They're willing to do that. So,
Well,
there's-
that's good. That's
Yeah,
different
okay.
than what we heard
Now-
here, so.
no, yes, well, that was in response, I think, to the feelings at the meeting, really. That's my impression. Anyway,
That's what meetings are all about.
right. When you have the watershed study, the Mirror Lake Protective Association study had graphs showing all the sources for water pollution and all that. Some of that is trees, some of that is soils from farming, fertilizers, all those things. And it's complex. In this next watershed study, will they be measuring pharmaceuticals that come through everyone's septic systems? I mean, we are all of us elderly.
I
their
think what you can
prescriptions
expect
going
to
through.
see as a watershed study is something that's similar to the Mirror Lake watershed study. The same contractors that did Mirror Lake, right?
There's a very limited amount of money there.
So it's not being done
The amount of
anywhere
money we're spending
measuring
for the entire
pharmaceuticals, yeah.
watershed study would not pay for this test of personal care items and
Really?
pharmaceuticals.
So that's really something for the future. I guess we're not there yet, but actually, the pharmaceuticals, we have an elderly population. We have a lot of pharmaceuticals in the water. Pharmaceuticals in individual septic systems, everybody's septic system, just about. It goes into the groundwater. Eventually, it gets into the lake. So, I mean, I think it is a broader issue, but you're kind of ahead of your time.
So that's why I was, my point.
Well, the
If it
the
was
benefit
going to
to
be-
testing what's coming out of the RAB is it's a single point that represents a huge number of households, as opposed to saying, we want to go around to Marcuson's household and test it, and Wingate's household and test it, and.
No, I'm talking
so-
about the water that comes in.
USGS already has some models they're developing.
Yeah, and it's amazing the specificity that can happen around pollutants. I mean, I actually did a brownfields reclamation project where even as local as DES could take an oil sample and tell you exactly where the oil came from, where it was sold, to what customer probably it was sold.
I did the
So-
same thing in my career with gasoline. I got a sample of gasoline, I could find out what lot it was from. Now, it costs money, but the science is out there. to
Yeah, I'm
really
sure that
help
they
us.
can determine where these chemicals are coming from.
So I was just wondering if the watershed study, it sounds like it's not, but does include not going to individual people's homes or tracking them down, but that's another thing to look for besides sponsors.
There's something
and
positive here. Under Mike Phelps' leadership and this gentleman's leadership, Dartmouth has done a study on the
The well
arsenic
one.
in the well testing.
Yeah.
And people as far away as Arizona are calling him for how do you do it? And look at the, he works on the milfoil. You know, it's several towns working together. And as I go to these other towns, it's how did you do it in Tuftonboro? And time again, when I hear things about the environment, it comes back to people like this and their predecessors, so,
And that's the only baseline we have, is the stuff,
Yes.
work that
Right.
Steve's done.
yep.
I think we need a more intensive baseline on that particular project, because we don't know what's happening there. I mean, at least it's been shut down for a while. So we can get kind of a baseline. But
So,
Full speed
well, what I
ahead.
was gonna ask is if we can get something organized this way, do you think we could do a replication in Tuftonboro that would say, this is what our septic systems contribute to that problem? If we could find the right place, you know what I mean? We would compare what's coming out of that place and other places that they tested. Incidentally, one of the reasons they're willing to kick in money, 40 to 60% of the cost, this is USGS, is because they haven't studied the RIB system.
Right.
So they want to do one. But
And how would that be? I know what you're saying, but I'm thinking, if we were to test the waters of 19 Mile Brook, how would that not be representative sampling of what septic systems are doing?
I think what you're suggesting is not 19 Mile Brook, but other waters in the area.
Yeah, do a
Away from
replication.
19
The
Mile.
main costs would be coming out of the study.
So it's
What's going
similar
into
to Brook.
main- But we say,
Yeah.
could we take some samples from this place or this place and just put it into the system
Right.
and add another $20,000 or $30,000 to the cost of this thing to cover a sampling protocol for this place or this place?
So do
Just
20
to-
Mile Brook instead of 19
Just
Mile Brook.
to see what our,
What's our
a
average?
comparison of some kind.
Yeah.
And you want to carefully look at the watershed to see if it replicates a typical Tuftonboro situation, and then you compare it with the 19 Mile Brook. And I don't know what USGS is willing to do, but we want them to do a sampling spot lower down in 19 Mile Brook, as well as up above, to see what's actually making it really valuable.
Right. But if you look at, I mean, you know, you got Wingate Brook down here, you got Melvin River, you got,
There's a good place out there somewhere where we
Yep.
can, where you can do the no influence from 19 Mile idea, but we would have to pay for that part. And I'm hoping we'd be willing to do that.
you got a budget, right?
Yeah, I think if we could get some.
I can put it in our budget, yeah.
Well, I think it makes sense to use an alternative baseline to compare with as well.
I want to use that as a counter argument point with the people I'm talking to, that, you know, we're willing to have ourselves looked at as well. You say you don't put all your stuff in septic system. Well, let's see what our effect is. Maybe we need to do some work. I don't know. We'll take the risk, you know.
Well, you certainly have a proven track record on your years on the Conservation Commission, so thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Now you can get back in time for lunch and then do your chores, right? Got your wood in yet for next winter? Thank you, Steve.
I should be doing that right now.
Yeah. So let's,
Okay, thanks, guys.
let's go to the signature file.
Let me know if that doesn't come through, because I just got a new laptop.
Okay.
So the first item is an application for current use for PID 42 1-5.
Sign that.
What's the recommendation?
The recommendation is that it be approved. This is from our assessor.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The next Next is an application for an elderly and blind exemption for PID 28-3-10. Recommendation is that it be denied because it does not meet the criteria.
So we won't sign it.
Hmm?
I'll move we don't sign it. Or do we
We
sign
just
it?
check off deny, I believe. Deny.
Does it require a vote to deny?
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Is, motion carries?
Well, that was my, because then those coming.
Next, we have two yield tax levy warrants for PID 34-1-1 and PID 65-3-7. And one is in the amount of $1,169.97. The other is for $1,232.43.
I'll make a motion that we sign both.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next, we have a gravel tax levy of $28.34 for PID 66-2-69.
Move that we sign that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Next, we have notice of intent to excavate. And this is for PID 66-2-69. And this is one of our existing old pits.
So it's not subject to.
Not subject to the
permitting process.
permitting process, that's correct.
I'll move we sign it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
There's only one on this?
Yes.
Okay. Aye.
Yeah, I know. Timber tax, you got two. Gravel tax, you
Well,
have
gravel
one.
tax is so small, we can't afford
Yeah.
that much ink.
Right.
We're only making $26.
Yep. Next, we have two notices of intent to cut wood or timber. One for PID 2-3-11, the other one for 68-3-2. Can I entertain a motion?
I'll move signature.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have two notices of lien on real property. One for PID 42-2-14 and the other one for 55-1-6-25.
What are the liens for and what are the amounts?
And these liens have to do with welfare extensions, and there is no amount listed. Okay, and the reason for that, I think, is because the amount changes. These are folks that are getting welfare money from the town, so.
Does it specify what they get for welfare, or is that not public information?
No, it's not public. So I'll entertain a
One of them
motion.
was electricity, though, I'll tell you that. So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
the solar project makes it. The 12 or 18.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
all right. So I'll entertain a motion on these two liens.
I'll make a motion to sign.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The final signature item I have, if it's the final one, is the 2018 Lake Host Program Grant from the New Hampshire Lakes Association. This is for the folks that man the boat ramps. And and let's see, what's the amount of our grant this year? It's a payroll grant award of $2,150 toward the folks at the boat ramps.
I'll make a motion that we sign that.
Second.
All right,
It's a great program.
it is. I think we just,
It's like having a cop there, although they do a nice
They're
job.
nicer.
Right.
in the last couple of years, the people we've had involved have taken a very appropriate approach
Very
as well.
There's two people that have split it by next to my house, and
Yeah.
they're like your next door neighbors, but they've made a difference too.
All right, this is just a single signature document for us. So,
I did want to add for you folks, as far as signatures, I remember the Avatar payment, actually the check has already been cut. It's just being held until that document was signed, if that helps with the numbers you were looking at for expenditures.
Presupposing a positive vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably back when it was going to just zip right through. All right. Selectmen's update. Tip.
I mean, I had an update too.
Okay. Well,
Moving
we
on.
can come back to you if
I've
you.
been here so long, I forgot.
I know.
Anyway,
All right. Lloyd.
I had a couple things to talk about, but they're in the correspondence.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, to help you out, I'm going past my notes about things we've talked about, you know, like the Libby Museum path and whatnot, and I'll put them in alphabetical order.
All right.
This is not a criticism, it's just that,
All right.
things get lost.
Yep.
yes,
They do. Absolutely.
I'll pursue that.
All right. Couple of things that I want to mention. Next Monday, a week from today, 6:30 in the evening, we have a meeting at the Fire and Rescue Station, Central Station, concerning the community solar project. This is a public input session.
Can we decide to post that?
Well, I'm going to be there, and
I'm gonna be there.
so let's post it.
Yeah, okay.
That
Sounds
that
good.
way, there's no,
It wasn't in the paper.
huh?
That
The
number-
notice is in the paper,
Yeah.
yes.
But
But
they
the
made
question
it to
is,
selectmen.
if we have a quorum of selectmen there, then we should post it as
Oh,
as a
okay.
meeting. Not
We
that
did
we're-
that for the OSPI
Yeah.
Yes, right,
meeting.
right.
I saw that one,
And the other thing that I wanted to touch on, anyway, I'm hoping we'll get a good turnout of people who want to find out what's going on here, and the group is seeking active input from people as it relates to the potential locations of the solar panels. Several different alternatives that have been looked at, and the concept of the project, in my mind, is solid, but if we get the grant and go forward with it, we want to make sure the execution works for the town and doesn't become just look at this darn thing up here.
I had a couple people, several people have spoken to me, but two people. Well, it sounds like you selectmen have made up your mind and all that, and I said, read the minutes of the meeting. read the grant, watch the tapes. This is not anything that money's being spent on without your approval.
Right.
And I got both of them calmed down.
Yeah, yeah.
And to their credit, they went and spent some time and came and followed up on this. So
And I-
democracy at work.
And I had some very thoughtful questions about,
Okay.
and observations about the project from a few folks, so that's great. Moving along, I do want to touch on the planning board meeting last Thursday. We had site plan review on an addition of a yurt and 2 tent platforms at Camp Belknap, and an application for a home-based occupation at a home on Middle Road. And there was some ongoing discussion also about the sale of a lot out of the unperfected, maybe that's the wrong term, subdivision near your sister's place. And it appears from what council has said that those lots can't be sold until the subdivision is substantially completed.
Or bonded.
Right, and neither of which has happened.
Is this the series of lots that are on Lisden Road that goes off of Ledge Hill Road? And there's also another road that goes back to Dane Road?
Yeah.
Huh?
I
Yeah.
think that's all
It-
in
yeah.
there.
Because some of those roads,
Well, this was a subdivision that was approved by the planning board many, many years ago. And apparently, after it was approved, it was deeded as individual lots rather than waiting until the subdivision got to the point where they could sell lots. So although the lots have been deeded individually, they can't be sold individually until the subdivision has achieved a substantial completion.
there's going to need some attention there. because-
And one of the problems with old subdivisions, and one of the things that the planning board is going to be moving forward on now, is identifying both deeded and undeeded subdivisions from years ago that are out there and letting the owners know what the status is. For instance, if you did a subdivision 25 years ago and it was approved at the time, and you never did anything with it, and you want to go in today to do the work, the standards have changed. So you're not grandfathered in because you didn't do the work on it at that point. So to take something that was done way in the past and go to bring it forward, things have to happen. It has to go back through the planning board, et cetera, to get there. So the planning board is going to be working on pulling the information together and communicating with the owners of all those projects what the current status is and what would be required for them to move forward.
So a couple of issues I think that just come to my mind is for instance, the wetlands impact or wetland surveying, which I had to do at one point in my life on a big piece of property. I don't think that some of these older places have had that. But the other issue I think would be how is the piece being taxed currently? Because the last thing we want to get involved in is a taking.
Right.
So if they're being taxed as individual lots, we need to have a longer discussion.
Right.
How we handle it like that.
Well, that's right. And as I say, there were some questions there, and additional information is going back to the attorney to get the definitive.
I don't think I know I'm not interested, and I'm sure you guys aren't, getting into another situation like the Zadida Farms.
Right.
No,
I mean, that's why we have bonding, that's why we have
that's right.
substantial
Right on.
completions.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yep.
Because those roads, maybe the developer says they're always going to be private, but we make them build them to town specs.
Exactly.
And then the association may decide, the town can help. And we don't have any options with it. if they're built to town specifications, we have to take them.
Both those roads in that area we talked about are in need of repair. There's been some major washouts.
Well, the logger didn't help them out any.
Correct.
Right. Okay, you think about what it was?
Well, I did happen to have a couple of conversations with people that I know who are on directors of different camps, not in Tuftonboro, and the Maris case, which I read. Did you guys get a copy?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think we need to take our assessor, Rod Wood's, advice and actually examine the charitable parts of these. So I would ask Karen to gather together new information. There was some specific language about compensation of board members. So that may stretch its long tentacles into, right?
Did you get a copy of that?
Well, I have a case, so.
Okay, this is interesting. Go to page 2, and the Supreme Court has said, these are the 4 tests.
Right.
That's on,
Right.
it hasn't gone to the
Oh, excuse me,
Superior Court.
That's the Superior Court.
Right, I think
Yeah.
it's going to the Supreme Court.
Yes, right.
Right.
But,
And the 4 tests were out of the previous case.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and that's generally what they put together, tests
Yep.
to make things pass. But, yeah, I think it's, I know that one of the directors that I spoke to has an agreement with the town of Bristol, because they're up on Newfound Lake,
Mhm.
and they pay a substantially larger
Yes.
payment of taxes than any of the communities in town.
I bumped into it in Auburn where 7,000 acres is owned by the Manchester Waterworks. And they pay a fee in lieu of taxes, and it's
Yeah.
negotiated every 3 years.
But I think if we don't, you know, I met with the campers last year, I'm sure I'll meet with them again this year after this case comes up. But I think if we're not proactive about it, then DRA is gonna tell us what we have to do. I mean, I would rather present with, this is the agreement we have with each of these camps.
Absolutely.
And it's a reasonable agreement, and have DRA decide, okay, this is a reasonable.
Be arbitrary.
This is what we as the directors of
Sure.
resources want you to do.
Yeah. Well, and particularly, we have one camp in town that pays no
Yeah,
pilot.
right.
And,
Because in lieu of doesn't seem to pass there, they need a copy of Black's Law Dictionary to find the definition of in lieu of, I guess. And it's,
my understanding is it's a small piece of a bigger organization, and they don't want to leave themselves open to, gee, if they pay it here, then they're gonna have to pay it someplace else. But
right.
they're gonna have to look very
You know,
carefully.
from the other end of it, I would think would bring them to the table faster so they can make a reasonable agreement.
Mhm.
And if it's, you know, 1% of the tax rate or whatever it is, they can take that off to their other places and
Yeah.
say, this is
And the
reasonable.
nice thing is that in your talks, this is not an adversarial relationship. You're trying to be proactive and
Right.
responsible. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to correspondence. Ready? The first item in here, that's been in here several weeks, is the draft meeting schedule for the second half of the year. And are we ready to deal with
I
that?
can't think that far ahead, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
You know, I
Yeah.
think we've been,
Yep,
I have some concerns.
all right.
September, October, November, and December is the bay of funding. We just get jammed up because CIP, budgets, and whatnot. There's 11 no meeting dates. 3 of them are holidays. I want my holidays off like you do. But there's other 8 no meeting days. That's 8 hours of productive time that we just...
24 hours is the rate we're going.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
well, yes.
Well, and last year we dealt with it in work sessions, and that seemed to work fine to me.
I'd like to leave it open if we could. For instance, I can't meet this Friday, if that's coming up.
Right.
But other Fridays, we can make adjustments.
And one of the benefits to the work sessions, particularly as it relates to budgets, is we can kind of zero in, and we're just going to primarily work on these budget things on a Friday morning, get them knocked out, and move along.
I personally like Fridays because I gotta come in and sign the checks anyway, so I'm killing two birds with one stone. And this is not a criticism, but I'm looking at some of the decisions we make. If they're done at a Monday meeting and it goes to these different committees, it's our staff members that have to hustle if it's a Friday, so.
That's why they earn the big bucks.
Okay.
Make them hustle.
So,
I think Friday meetings are adjustable
Yep.
and
so
reasonable.
I do like your idea, Mr. Chairman, that if we can zero in on one or two, but you know what, at every work session, there's something that's got to be signed that's kind of a exigent circumstance, and I'm happy with that, so.
I'll make a motion that we sign this, or approve the schedule for the
back
second
right
half
here.
of
Okay.
2018.
All right. Do I hear a second? I'll second it. All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
You're opposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for smiling.
No, that's, we shouldn't necessarily rubber stamp everything through. All right, the next item is LRPC data services. And this is, as it relates to, I think, the subject you were talking about with the roads.
Remember, didn't we want to do something as far as the wire that goes across the road?
Isn't it the highway, the state highways, right?
No, there's two of them. Go to the back of one of the pages. It talks about
one of the
Traffic count.
traffic count.
data collection program. Yes, one of the things that is an input to our pavement study is road usage. And two ways you gather data. One is with the
Radar.
traffic counter, and the other one is with the little traffic monitoring box that either on the trailer or that the chief is getting, or during patrol. I'm not averse to using their traffic counting.
My experience with it on Lang Pond Road was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we have them coming for the pavement study, right?
Yeah,
So can we include that in?
I think that
Maybe.
that could be a good thing to
Yep.
include at that time. One of the things in my mind with respect to traffic that we need to have a good understanding is not just what the traffic is, but what's the traffic in May, what is it in July, what is it in October, and that sort of thing, because that affects the way the roads are.
I also thought about having it done twice a year for Clay, for his count up at the transfer station. Just a thought.
Okay. So, Karen, they're coming in
On the 7th, I believe.
on May 7th? Okay, so let's put this on for
Yep.
7th?
They'll bring information about guardrails too.
Yep. Okay, good. All right. Got a letter here from Carolyn Sundquist regarding the Hurlburt Trust. You see this?
I did not.
Okay. And
All right.
so, please.
Yes, I read.
All right. So she's, has
Yeah, I need to revisit the process. I'm not certain she's correct, but
Yep.
she's up.
Anyway.
I need to talk about it.
So that's something that we need to look into and follow up on. So,
Is that,
I'll do that.
who's gonna replace her?
Well, you're right, exactly. Sorry.
yep. Notice about the solar meeting, which we already talked about, and you are gonna put out a meeting notice on that, right?
Yeah, no problem.
Operation Safe Stop, which Chief Shigori mentioned earlier.
Right.
And as I say, it's just, the idea that we have people that actually drive around, stop school buses in the town of Tufton Road, just,
See, I always thought the school bus driver called that in.
Well, I-
Chevy pickup truck red with
Yeah.
plate number or something.
I thought they did, but
all
Whatever.
right. We have correspondence here from Lakes Region Planning Commission, request for nominations for the 2018 awards. They have the Kim Ayers Award for extraordinary voluntary effort to maintain and improve the environmental quality of the region. They have the award for excellence for organizations who have completed exciting and innovative projects in your community. And then community service awards for individuals who have made exceptional or sustained contributions. And the
should we give that to Steve Wingate? Because I know Dusty Davies won it a couple of years ago.
seems appropriate to me.
And I don't know,
Sure.
it wasn't the Kim Ayers Award, but
It was, yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Bird got an award for all their
Yeah.
years of water
Yeah.
testing. And he may have a couple of committee members, without giving names out, that have certainly gone beyond the.
Well, I would support that. And you, through the Conservation Commission, have been very close to what Steve has done. Would you take this on as putting the information together for the nomination?
Sure.
Okay?
Steve.
Yeah,
Oh, Steve.
that's what I thought we were nominating.
Yeah, but
We don't want him to write his own recommendation. though.
Sure.
right,
And I don't know that one.
yeah. I do know him well, but not not from the same perspective. We have a correspondence here from Gina, Parks and Rec, with photos about the damaged
To the fence.
down at, by the town beach. And is this something, this was damaged by the state highway folks as they pushed snow off this year up and over.
I don't think it's in their right of way, so I'm not sure.
Why don't you give it to me and I'll go and follow up on it?
Yeah, would you do that? And I mean, the fact that it's outside the right of way, but they damaged it with the snow,
Yeah.
would seem to be
And maybe
the,
insurable.
yeah, there'd be
And
some,
there may be a way of just pulling the
Yep.
posts aren't bent, maybe there's a way of correcting the situation.
all right. An advertisement here for lifeguards for the Tuftonboro Town Beach. An email correspondence from Bob McWhirter, asking about barges that are tied up down the Melvin River, and asking that as we do the study for a new police station, if we could expand that and look at merging the health and public safety functions into one department. Consider locating a police department at the central fire station, or building a small facility next to the fire station, so we can eliminate duplicated space requirements.
We'll bring all that up.
Yep,
A public safety building was voted down at town meeting.
it was. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I mean, we got barges in the Melbourne River, and we got active shooter training. We're like a real big town.
There you go, there you go. All right. So, other correspondence we have, I'm not gonna go through it all, but there's, I guess in my mind, the design work for the repair of the bridge on Saddle Road is in here, along with some other things that might be worthy of review. Any other business?
In the legislative bulletin,
Oh, yeah.
there's quite a lot of talk about the net metering, which is going to affect the solar project that you're in.
Actually, I don't think it is, because it's larger solar installations is what the net metering thing.
Or
the
a
legislation's-
kilowatt. I don't know
They
how
raised it
big-
from
how
1 to
big is it?
5.
Yeah.
How big is the one that we're proposing?
This is,
It's over a kilowatt.
Yeah. Let's see. 1 to 5 megawatts, okay? And this is 45 kW, so it's considerably smaller. This basically addresses solar farms, which is beyond, but there's mention in here of water quality monitoring and treatment. There's a water quality standards bill, and both of those have something to do with the PFAS, the chemicals that they found in the water downstate, so not way afield from what we're talking about with pharmaceuticals and personal care stuff that wasn't checked for in the past, and as you get involved, it's like, we got problems there, so better going forward to be proactive. So, yeah. What else? Am I missing anything else?
Of any substance to us.
Yes.
All right.
There's some tax questions, but they
Yep.
were got tabled.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yes, on the issue of taxes, tax liens, there were 2 pieces of property that Jackie recommended that we go forward on. One was on Tufton Borough Neck, and she gave me an interesting history on that. Might want to talk to her. The other one was can't make contact, or they're not responding up in Wildwood.
Right.
Now, Wildwood is an association, and in talking with her, you know, it's not like taking a property in the trailer park where we're responsible for fees. But before I vote on that, I'd like to have the municipal association weigh in on it, if we could ask them. Jackie has some information about what Hidden Valley, and the town did not, pay for snow plowing and stuff like
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's automatic that you have to take on the obligations of the
Right.
Exactly.
association.
No, you spoke pretty well, but I looked at those properties there, and it was her recommendation that we consider those 2 pieces of property.
Mhm.
And I have something else, but I'll...
Yep. Well, and the list that she has for deeding has gone down slightly from when we talked. It was 21 parcels. We're now down to 18, and she indicated a lot of these come in right under the deadline. So deeding date is May 8th. So those that are coming to 3 years in arrears, it's to great benefit to them to pay some of their taxes so they don't lose it, because once they lose it, they gotta pay all of the back taxes, interest and fees, and if it's not owner occupied, the penalty in order to get it back.
And on that note, did you see where the legislature is looking to make it?
The interest rates are 18% currently, so
Right.
it's.
Yeah, they are, and they're looking at adjusting them down, but it's sort of a convoluted approach that they're looking at taking on that. All right, you had another...
Yes, I think it was passed over. This is a copy of the highway funding fact sheet that Lakes
Yep.
Region made available.
Yep.
And I asked which ones can I say that Tufton Borough supports.
Yep.
And they'll be talking about that next Tuesday, next Wednesday.
Well, I'll give you my opinion. Increasing the rate on the tolls, I think is fine as long as it's used on the toll roads.
It has to be, doesn't it?
You know,
I don't think
well,
they have to change that.
but the move that was afoot last year was to
Throw it in the
bring it in and then it goes into the general fund. So, you know, if you're paying for a toll road, that's where that money ought to go.
I agree with that.
State aid to highways, and certainly that's something that helps us all going forward. And it helps towns to stretch their budgets in terms of rebuilding these roads. So to have it, in my view, to have that reinstituted going forward, it benefits and is this just for like unnumbered state highways, or is this a general?
I will ask that question.
I mean, you mentioned Middleton Road.
Yes.
Middleton Road is an unnumbered state highway.
Yes.
So that was a partnership between the town and the state to get it rebuilt, and maybe it got reclassified. It's no longer an unnumbered state. I don't know. At any
I
rate.
think it has a number, but
Right.
it's certainly older than most roads.
Right.
Correct.
But didn't Wolfboro took over ownership of that?
Yes.
Yes,
It
right.
allowed negotiation.
Right. With respect to a municipal transportation improvement fund, I don't have any opposition to the legislature giving towns the authority to charge that. That's not the same as saying that for the town of Tuftonboro that I embrace it.
Oh, it's a tax that can
This
be
is
locally imposed.
that you can add $5 or $10 onto your motor vehicle registration for local road maintenance.
And the statute has written into it that it has to go through all kinds of hoops for each local municipality.
Well, the $5 is already in place, right?
Yes.
Right, and this was a bill that would increase it from $5 to $10, and
Would allow the town to go up to $10.
so.
Yep.
I mean, I think having the local option to do that is fine.
Yeah.
But,
Especially if you're looking at big projects and that sort of thing, that
Yeah.
Yes.
you're gonna raise a little extra money.
yep,
It would be nice to. Thanks. Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. But a lot of the state highway program relates to the federal participation. So if you don't have
Right.
a state highway program, you don't get some of the federal money.
Yep.
that's available. And after April 15th, I'd like to get a little of my federal money back.
you got it.
Yes.
And we don't have any, I mean, we could tell our federal officials to increase the federal gas tax, but I don't know whether they're ever gonna do anything like that.
It was last done under Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'll pass on this to the TAC meeting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other business?
We have a couple.
Yes, you have,
In the past,
Epic meeting.
in the past, when you had lists of tax deeded properties, you had that list make the rounds. Are you gonna do that to the planning board and the conservation commission?
no, this is, what we're talking about is, these are taking properties by tax deed, not selling.
So just that first step?
All right, when we made the rounds before, this is when we were looking at selling property that the town owns that has previously been taken by tax deed.
So this is just a.
These are people that are 3 years in arrears on their taxes, that by law, unless the governing body directs otherwise, the tax collector is required to deed to the town. So this is the first step to getting there.
Okay.
You don't pay your taxes long enough, the town takes the land, and then in the future they can sell it.
So do you also have a list of properties you're going to sell?
We have a list
I mean, you
of,
have an RFP for an auctioneer or?
We're waiting to get that out, or did it go out?
I thought
It
I
did
saw-
go out. It went out.
Yeah, I
the
saw
RFP
that.
went out, yeah.
So is that list, all those other properties that are sort of on hold, that have already made the rounds?
Yes.
Those are,
Several times.
right,
Okay.
right,
These will get added to that list, or some of them will,
right.
at some point.
But lest there be any confusion as far as I'm concerned, and I think, I don't want to speak for you guys, but the town has no real interest in taking properties because people won't pay their taxes. There's no benefit to the town owning these properties. It's not a piece of property, you say, this has got a purpose for the town to have it, so we'll have it. This is, you don't pay your taxes long enough, and the town, it then belongs to the town. And to accumulate and just hold them is, serves no benefit to the town. All right, any other business? Let's see, I think we've got, this had to do with the Dietz thing that we've done today. And I have no, this is, so this is sealed, I don't,
I just didn't feel comfortable opening it, but for you folks to open it.
oh,
Yeah.
all right.
It's a missing bid.
Do we need to go and,
Well,
Non-public.
I'm done. It's 12:30.
yeah, I suppose we can go into non-public to review that, so, but I'm not sure what the,
Why? Yeah, where does it fall under the?
well, I don't know.
Personnel, yeah.
Okay,
And
personnel.
FYI, I can look up that.
All the other businesses done.
Yes, all the other business is done. Thank you, Melissa.
Do we need to do anything?
I don't know.
It was just kind of a FYI, he wanted it put in the file.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
I don't think it's qualified.
if it's a personnel file, it goes into the file, it's not public information, is it?
An
Yeah,
incident report.
yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Okay. This is non-public, goes in his,
Yeah, all right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.